Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 41. Suddenly, the void distorted as a huge slash tore through the air, heading straight for the students. They were all shocked and they all attacked at the same time. In the distance, Zhang Dingtian rose into the air, his eyes cold as ice. Even though they had heard of him before, the students still felt numb when they saw him in person. There were realm breakers among the natives, which was simply abnormal. With a whoosh, an arrow streaked across the sky and struck one of the students. It was the same student who had attacked the capital, and blood splattered from the sky. This was Wu Xing, one of the 7 sages, the wolf sage. He had been overseeing the grasslands, but he had learned that the capital was under siege through a gadget he had stolen. He had come to help a few days ago. The 4 sages were fighting more than 20 students. The difference in power was so great that even Zhang Dingtian couldn't make up for it. In less than 15 minutes, Zhou Xian spat out blood, his body covered in wounds. Wu Xing's abdomen had also been pierced by a student. Tens of thousands of cultivators from the Chinese camp had come out to fight, but they had been slaughtered like weeds. They couldn't even get close to the students. Geraldine hid in a corner, watching the scene in horror. She wasn't from Earth, so she wouldn't throw her life away. Besides, she couldn't even stop a single student with her strength. A gust of wind blew past, freezing the world. Many students looked at the ruins of the city walls in astonishment. Their 2 students had been frozen. Hayden was shocked. Innate gift. You actually have an innate gift. The word, innate gift, shocked everyone, and all the students looked at Bai Shui in disbelief. Her originally beautiful face was now imprinted in everyone's hearts. Bai Shui's lips were red and blood dripped from her chin to the ground. She breathed heavily, exhaling cold air with every breath. She was already at her limit, and these monsters couldn't be killed. Not many people knew about Bai Shui's innate gift, not even the 7 sages. She had hidden it well, but she was helpless against Hayden's students. The next moment, all the students stared at Bai Shui greedily. Everyone knew the importance of an innate gift, and if they could capture one for the faction behind them, their status would skyrocket. The student who had stabbed Wu Xing casually threw him aside and laughed as he charged at Bai Shui. The student who had been planning to kill Zhou Xian also grinned and charged over. In the sky, more than 10 idle students attacked at the same time. At this moment, white snow was even more important than the capital or even the fugitive. Geraldine sighed. This was the sorrow of the week. Since Bai Shui's talent was exposed, she could only be captured. No one would waste a talented cultivator. She would be arranged to be married off to some influential figure in order to increase the chances of giving birth to a talented cultivator. Eddie stared greedily at white snow and rushed over, but Zhang Dingtian was faster. Scram! Zhang Dingtian roared and countless slashes flew out from all directions. More than 20 students were forced to retreat. They were shocked by Zhang Dingtian's strength, but even so, it did not diminish their determination to snatch Bai Shui. Talented cultivators were too important. Eddie's fist slammed into Zhang Dingtian's abdomen, knocking him back 10 meters. Still standing, Zhang Dingtian slashed out with his saber, forcing Eddie to retreat. Hayden crushed the water crystal and shouted, "Water spout!" A torrent of water rushed towards Zhang Dingtian. At the same time, all sorts of attacks came from all directions. Zhang Dingtian's eyes widened and he clenched his teeth so hard that they bled. With a low roar, he stabbed his saber into the ground and slashed it out. From bottom to top, countless rocks shot out in all directions. The earth trembled and a huge crack spread from outside the city into the city, burying countless survivors. The attacks from all directions were blocked by Zhang Dingtian, and he himself was at his limit. Several students who hadn't attacked before suddenly charged out, 2 attacking Zhang Dingtian and 1 grabbing at Bai Shui. The talented cultivator is ours, haha. Zhang Dingtian was hit and his body was pressed into the ground. He almost lost his grip on his saber. Bai Shui stared at the student and raised her hand. Frost palm. Bang. A shockwave swept across the sky and froze the ground. The student grabbing at Bai Shui was instantly frozen solid. He had underestimated her. She was one of the 3 high saints, comparable to the strongest in the academy. Even Hayden couldn't take her down. Eddie saw that Zhang Dingtian was heavily injured and charged out again, this time grabbing at Bai Shui. The talented cultivator was just as valuable as a fugitive, and Zhang Dingtian had been eliminated. 2 other students attacked at the same time, all of them comparable to Hayden. The 3 of them grabbed at Bai Shui at the same time. Even Zhang Dingtian couldn't protect her now. Bai Shui's face paled. Is it over? What a pity. Suddenly, a familiar figure appeared in front of Bai Shui. Boom, boom, boom. 3 loud bangs were heard and 3 figures were sent flying. It was Eddie's group. All the students stared at the man who had appeared in front of Bai Shui in disbelief. Who is he? He had defeated 3 of the strongest in the academy in a single blow. In the corner, Geraldine's eyes widened. He's back. Back in the city, Zhou Xian laughed bitterly and spat out blood. Bai Shui stared at the figure in front of her in shock. He wasn't tall, but he had shielded her from the wind and rain. This person had really returned and he seemed to have become even stronger. It was naturally Lu Yin who had appeared in front of Bai Shui. He didn't have a gadget, so he obviously didn't know that the capital had been attacked. I told you I'd be back, he said. Be careful, there's too many of them, Bai Shui said weakly. Lu Yin nodded, his expression turning solemn. Indeed, there were too many people. He was now a peak sentinel and his cosmic palm was no weaker than Zhang Dingtian's. However, even Zhang Dingtian had been beaten to a pulp, so it would be difficult to fight them head-on. Cough cough. Zhang Dingtian crawled out from the ground, leaning on his sword. He glanced at Lu Yin before sweeping his gaze around, his expression resolute. Lu Yin tossed the medicine to Zhang Ding. Treat him. Zhang Dingtian violently swallowed the healing medicine. Lu Yin was speechless. He'd rubbed it on himself, but whatever, it should be effective even if he swallowed it. After all, it came from Shamrock Enterprises. In the distance, Eddie and the other 2 stood up and stared at Lu Yin. Who's there? Lu Yin didn't plan on wasting words and put on Zhou armor, sparks flying as lightning clashed around his body. Hayden was shocked. That's Zhou armor, why do you have it? She gave it to me, Lu Yin replied indifferently. Impossible. Eddie, Hayden and a few other students exclaimed at the same time. Zhou was very famous in the Great Yu Empire because of her powerful and overprotective brother, Zherbok. Whenever he was mentioned, the younger generation of the Great Yu Empire would feel powerless. He was a freak and because of him, no one dared to bully Zhou. If that armor had really been given to this person by Zhou, then it would be troublesome. Was this person related to her family? All the students stared at Lu Yin in shock. This person couldn't be Zhou's boyfriend, could he? Lu Yin took a deep breath, his gaze turning sinister. Stay away, he said, charging straight at Eddie. He was the strongest of the students and the one who had organized the attack on the capital. His goal was to capture the ringleader first. While Eddie was still pondering over Lu Yin's identity, Lu Yin's attack had already reached him. He hurriedly retreated. He had just experienced Lu Yin's power and didn't want to face him head-on. Lu Yin used the roving step to appear in front of Hayden, who was surprised to see Lu Yin actually attacking him. Water spout. Hayden tried to cover himself with water in an attempt to block Lu Yin, but Lu Yin rushed in front of him with a smirk. He then struck out with a palm in the direction Eddie had retreated. Space Render Palm? Eddie was shocked and punched back, the shockwave pushing everything aside as Lu Yin circled around Hayden to attack him again. Eddie gritted his teeth. Kid, don't go too far. Lu Yin sneered and raised his hand to strike Eddie. Eddie snorted as he sensed danger. He clenched his right fist as he heard the faint roar of a beast. This was his battle technique, the Beastmaster's Fist, which he had used to defeat the strongest students from 30 different academies and enter Yu Academy as an exception. Back on Earth he had only used it against Zhang Dingtian and a fugitive, but now he was being forced into a corner. Stars appeared in Lu Yin's palm as he unleashed the Sirius palm. 3 stars flickered and then exploded. The first star exploded, causing Eddie's eyes to widen as the Beast King fist was forcefully stopped. The second star exploded, causing intense pain in his right fist. When the third star exploded, Eddie spat out a mouthful of blood and flew backwards, his right fist shattered and his body smashed into the ground, kicking up a cloud of dust. Against Eddie, Lu Yin didn't hold back with the Sirius palm and crippled him in one blow. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 42. Everyone was stunned. That was Eddie, a powerhouse who'd entered U Academy as an exception and was publicly acknowledged as the strongest. He was someone who could fight Zhang Dingtian head-on, but he'd been crippled with a single palm strike. Zhang Dingtian was just as shocked. This person was so much stronger than before that even he wasn't confident in being able to take on that palm. Lu Yin looked at his right palm where the third star had appeared. It seemed to be more powerful than he'd expected. Sirius Palm wasn't just a simple starburst attack. Each star would stack the damage, and a 3-star Sirius Palm was far more powerful than a 2-star attack. Lu Yin had once guessed that he'd be able to match Zhang Dingtian when the third star appeared, but now he knew that he'd actually surpassed the other man. In the distance, a student stared at his gadget in shock. 3,700 power level, a realm breaker. Everyone felt their scalps go numb. Realm breakers were freakish geniuses that only the most gifted geniuses in the universe could reach. It was inconceivable that 2 of them had appeared on a fringe planet, and there was even a cultivator with an innate gift next to them. Was this really an ordinary planet? Geraldine was stunned. This bastard had actually become so strong. Lu Yin clenched his fists and scanned the students, grinning as he charged at one of them. That student was one of the strongest in the academy, and he was scared out of his wits when he saw Lu Yin charging towards him. He didn't even think of resisting and immediately tried to escape, but Lu Yin grabbed him by the shoulder and crushed his ring armor. "Stay put," Lu Yin growled, punching the student in the forehead and knocking him unconscious. He then continued to charge towards the other students. The scene was strange. Lu Yin was like a lion charging into a flock of sheep. Sirius Palm made him invincible, and the attacks of the other students were useless against him. After Lu Yin knocked out 8 of them, the rest dispersed in a hubbub. They couldn't fight him and they couldn't defend against him either. Hayden was the first to flee, but Bai Shui had been keeping an eye on him the entire time. "Get out of my way, woman!" Hayden roared. He didn't want to be knocked out, and it was obvious that the bastard had a motive for doing so. Thinking back to the fate of Parlai and Varen, he sucked in a breath of cold air. Was the bastard planning to kidnap all of the trial students? Whoosh! Just as Hayden was about to break through the ice and escape, a terrifying slash streaked across the ground, forcefully stopping him in his tracks. In front of him, Zhang Dingtian wielded his saber and stared coldly at Hayden. "Did I say you could leave?" Hayden was stunned for a moment. Then he felt a sharp pain in the back of his head and lost consciousness. Bai Shui retracted her hand. Her eyes were filled with excitement. It seemed that doing this was very satisfying. Zhang Dingtian stared blankly at Bai Shui. This was the first time he'd seen Bai Shui use a club, and he had to admit that Lu Yin's actions were quite provocative. Further away, Zhurlin and Balor stared blankly at the capital, their faces twitching. "Are my eyes playing tricks on me? That shameless bastard is capturing students?" Balor smiled wryly. "You're not, he really is capturing students. This is probably the first time in the history of the trial that something like this has happened." No matter which trial it was, the students were like gods standing high above the masses, able to look down on the masses. Their only opponent was themselves. But now all the students participating in the trial, even the strongest batch, were being captured one by one. They were as terrified as rabbits, and in the end, less than 5 of them managed to escape. When the capital finally regained its calm, there were 19 unconscious students lying on the ground in a pitiful state. Lu Yin wiped the sweat off his brow. He was exhausted. The ones who'd escaped were too fast and their movement techniques were too good for him to catch. 19 here, 21 if you include Parlai and Varen. As Zhou Xian brought those 2 from Blue Mountain Academy? That's 23 students, not a small number. Lu Yin calculated, his hands moving quickly as he plundered them one by one. Zhang Dingtian and Bai Shui were speechless. Lu Yin's movements were too practiced. Eddie hadn't fainted, only heavily injured. His eyes went wide. "You're that interstellar bandit?" Lu Yin glanced at him. "Don't spout nonsense, these are my spoils. I can't fight for nothing." Eddie was furious. Geraldine came out at this time to help Lu Yin deal with the spoils. Lu Yin didn't blame her. She was also a trial student, and it was already good enough that she hadn't helped him attack the capital. The battle had been tiring. Even with his armor, his internal organs had been shaken up and he needed to rest. Zhang Dingtian and Bai Shui didn't even want to move. Zhou Xian and Wu Xing were heavily injured, so Lu Yin had Geraldine treat them before he was brought back to the capital by the Chinese camp. All of the cultivators from the Chinese camp moved out to clean up the ruins. 2 hours later, all of the students who had been knocked unconscious woke up one after another. When they realized that they were all tied up, they all glared at Lu Yin angrily. They glared at Lu Yin especially when they found out that they had been robbed. "You're that interstellar bandit, the one who robbed Ian," someone shouted. Beside him was Ian. "Hey, don't use me as an example, it's embarrassing. You must be the one who robbed Ian and now you're robbing us? You're a bandit," someone else shouted. Ian was speechless. Lu Yin sneered and walked in front of them, raising his hand. The students jumped in fright and quickly shut their mouths. Lu Yin retracted his hand and was about to say something to Zhang Dingtian and the rest when his eyes narrowed and he looked towards the sky. At the same time, countless people across Earth looked up and saw meteors streaking across the sky. One after another, they streaked across the horizon. Lu Yin was shocked. This was the second batch of trial takers. "Why so early?" he asked Geraldine in confusion. "It's rare for a second batch to appear, so I don't know." Bai Shui walked over with a solemn expression. "It should have started from the moment we received the notice." Zhang Dingtian looked at the sky and narrowed his eyes when he saw 3 meteors flying towards them. Lu Yin immediately shouted, "Bring these people back to the capital, quick." Not long after, a loud explosion rang out in the distance. Countless survivors in the capital were terrified. Today's despair was comparable to the apocalypse. Dozens of realm of sky powerhouses had appeared, and now even meteors were crashing down. Was humanity really in a desperate situation? The steel city walls had been reduced to rubble, and Lu Yin's group stood atop the rubble and watched as a meteor crashed down. It was only a few thousand meters away from the capital, and they could even see the alien spacecraft surrounded by flames. Boom! The ground shook once more as a huge crack spread towards the capital. Zhang Dingtian waved his hand and a shockwave tore through the ground to block the crack. The next moment, a scorching heat wave swept across the capital, bringing with it an endless amount of dust. Everyone felt the pressure descend upon them. When the dust settled, a circular spacecraft with a diameter of 3 meters appeared in front of everyone. It was very small, exactly the same as Vesta's, and could only fit one person. A huge cone-shaped crater had appeared in the ground. Another explosion rang out in the distance. Lu Yin's eyes narrowed as 3 meteors crashed down. This was the second batch of trial takers who had come for Astral 10, hoping to do well in the trials. Eddie was held to the side, his eyes glued to the spacecraft with excitement. "Come, let these natives see what it means to be a monster and what it means to be strong." Crack! The circular spacecraft's hatch opened and hot air spewed out into white smoke. A hand reached out and grabbed the edge of the spacecraft, and a figure walked out into the sunlight. A handsome man with a hint of a smile appeared in front of everyone's eyes. He walked out of the spacecraft and slowly floated to the ground. He didn't look at Lu Yin's group, instead scanning his surroundings with a probing gaze. Lu Yin's eyes narrowed as he looked at the man. He was extremely dangerous. He looked down at his gadget and saw a power level of 3000, a peak sentinel. They were clearly on the same level, but why did this person give off such a dangerous vibe? It wasn't just Lu Yin. Zhang Dingtian, Bai Shui, Geraldine, and even Eddie felt an extreme sense of danger the moment they saw the man. This gentle-looking man seemed to hide a suffocating pressure. "Who is he?" Lu Yin asked, patting Eddie's head. Eddie stared blankly at the man and shook his head. "I don't know." Lu Yin's eyes narrowed. This man hadn't even looked at them. Was he looking down on them? This was an invisible arrogance that was engraved in his bones and indescribable. Thanks to the readers, I'll update at 2 p.m. Thank you. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 43. At that moment, 2 black dots flew over from the distance. 2 more men had arrived, both of them quickly descending. Eddie was excited to see them. "Senior Roz, I'm here, Senior Roz." Lu Yin slapped him on the head again. "What are you shouting for? Who's here?" Eddie glared fiercely at Lu Yin. "Your end is here. Student Roz is an expert from U Academy, you're no match for him. Let me go and I can help you plead with Senior Roz." Lu Yin looked at the 2 men who had just arrived with a solemn expression. U Academy? That was where the true elites of the Great U Empire resided, and it could also be considered an academy that nurtured the best of the younger generation. Outside the capital, the first man who'd arrived was still standing on the ground and looking around. The two who'd arrived later looked down at Lu Yin's group from above, and one of them stepped forward and looked down arrogantly. "Eddie, you really know how to make you academy proud. You were actually captured by the natives, you useless thing." Eddie's expression turned ugly as he gritted his teeth and lowered his head. The other man waved his hand and looked down calmly. "Who captured Eddie? Let him go and I'll spare his life." "Is he the senior Raz you mentioned?" Lu Yin asked. Eddie was excited. "Yes, Senior Raz isn't an ordinary Yu Academy expert. His father is the vice-treasurer of the Great Yu Empire, Lord Sikar. He collected all sorts of battle techniques for Senior Raz, and his strength is second only to Melders in Yu Academy." Lu Yin's eyes lit up. "Vice-treasurer? His family is rich." Eddie was stunned, but that wasn't the point. Lu Yin looked at Raz with a burning gaze. He was in dire need of star crystals. The 8 cubes that the students had given him were far from enough, but Raz might be able to surprise him. As for the strength that Eddie had mentioned, Lu Yin didn't really care. Raz seemed much gentler than the first man, and that person was definitely dangerous. "That person seems to have changed," Zhang Dingtian suddenly spoke up. Lu Yin turned around and looked at the man who was still standing on the ground. His gaze changed. This person gave off a very ordinary feeling, just like a normal person. He didn't seem as dangerous as he had when Raz and the others had approached him. This person had changed the moment Raz and the others had approached him. Raz frowned. "What, you're not going to let him go? Or do you think you can protect this place by luck?" "Senior Raz, the fugitive left something in the city. As long as we control this place, he'll definitely come," Eddie shouted. His defeat and the arrival of the second batch of trial takers had completely destroyed his hopes of completing the mission. He might as well do Raz a favor and have someone to rely on in the future. Raz's eyes lit up and he smiled. "Is that so? Looks like my luck isn't bad. Even a random landing would result in a good place." At this moment, the man standing behind Raz looked to the side and glanced at the spacecraft. He whispered a few words in Raz's ear, and Raz looked at the first man who had appeared. "Friend, my name is Raz. Let's get to know each other." On the ground, the man squatted down to pick up the soil and sniff it. "Smells like blood." High up in the sky, Raz's face sank. "Friend, let's get to know each other. I'm Raz, the son of the Great Yu Empire's vice-treasurer, Sikar." The man stood up and looked at Raz with a faint smile. "Xiao Luo, I'm just a nobody. I wouldn't dare to associate myself with you." Raz frowned. "Charlotte?" He had never heard of this name before. Lu Yin turned to Zhang Dingtian. "We can't let them talk, it'll be troublesome if they reach a consensus. I'll go grab Raz, you keep an eye on Xiao Luo." Zhang Dingtian nodded and tightened his grip on his sword. Eddie heard this and looked at Lu Yin like he'd seen a ghost. Grabbing Raz? Was he crazy? Raz's strength aside, just his background alone was enough to deter trial takers from touching him. Lu Yin looked up at the sky. This was just the beginning. He had waited for so long and now he was finally getting close. With that in mind, Lu Yin flew towards Raz with a bang, and under everyone's shocked gazes he struck out with his palm, causing the air to distort. Raz had been wondering about Xiao Luo's identity, but he hadn't expected Lu Yin to attack him directly. The man behind him stepped forward in anger. "How dare you attack Sir Raz?" His hand transformed into a claw as a formless bestial roar filled the void. Lu Yin seemed to see a giant claw covering the sky. It was similar to Eddie's Beast King fist, but it was much more powerful. Lu Yin didn't let his guard down and 2 stars appeared in his palm. The two collided in the air with a bang, shockwaves spreading out in an arc as an invisible force crushed the ground. The man was sent flying 100 meters away, spitting out a mouthful of blood as he stared at Lu Yin in shock. His strength was about the same as Eddie's. Lu Yin's full-powered Sirius Palm had crippled Eddie, and his 2-star Sirius Palm was enough to injure him. Raz's eyes narrowed. "No wonder you were able to capture Eddie. You're quite strong." He then raised his right palm and transformed it into a claw, but this attack was much stronger than the one from before. A phantom of a giant claw appeared in the void, as if it had stepped out from outer space to grab Lu Yin. Lu Yin's expression changed. Eddie, that man, and Raz had all used the same battle technique, but each was stronger than the last. Below, Xiao Luo's eyes lit up. Yu Academy's top battle technique, the Sky Beast Claw. Although this person has only grasped 5 of the 108 forms, it's enough to crush most sentinels. Not bad. Behind him, Zhang Dingtian's eyes went wide while Bai Shui, Geraldine and the rest were shocked. They had never even heard of such a battle technique before. This was the foundation of the Great Yu Empire. 2 stars revolved in Lu Yin's palm, and a third appeared and collided with Roz's claw. Everyone's expressions changed as a huge shockwave swept out in all directions, the 3 stars exploding at the same time. Roz was shocked by the superimposed shockwave and the phantom claw shattered. His eyes narrowed as his body vanished, and Lu Yin used the roving step at the same time to vanish from the sky. The next moment the 2 reappeared at the same time. Lu Yin struck out with his palm again, but Roz was afraid. His sky beast claw had been broken and there was no way he could block it. He dodged to the side and crushed a gale crystal, a gray whirlwind swirling around his left index finger as he pointed at Lu Yin. This was his strongest battle technique, the Yin Wind Finger, a technique that Sicker had paid a huge price for. Lu Yin felt a sense of danger, and Roz's command caused his entire body to turn icy cold. This was a bone-chilling cold that seemed capable of freezing star energy. Lu Yin's eyes grew cold as he activated the serious art, 3 stars appearing around him. The gray whirlwind from Roz's Yin Wind Finger was continuously weakened as it neared Lu Yin's body. Roz was shocked. How was this possible? Lu Yin easily dodged the finger and pressed his left palm against Roz's abdomen, Space Render Palm. He then used a huge force to slam Roz into the ground, not even having time to put on his ring armor. Lu Yin's eyes flashed and he circulated the serious art once more. The man's claw suddenly slowed down as it neared Lu Yin's body, to the point where Lu Yin could clearly see all the variations of this battle technique. Lu Yin used the roving step to dodge the attack, raised his right palm and clawed at the man under everyone's shocked gazes. There was a thump as the man's right shoulder was injured and he fell to the ground. Eddie stared blankly at the scene. What had he just seen? That person had actually used the Sky Beast Claw, an ultimate battle technique passed down through the Yu Academy. Only those who had joined the academy could learn it through the stone walls. How was this possible? Eddie wasn't the only one who was shocked. Everyone else was as well, including Lu Yin himself. After defeating Eddie and capturing many students, Lu Yin had suffered countless attacks. Although Zherlin's armor had protected him, his body had still been injured. It was during that time that he'd used the serious art to recover his star energy that he'd unintentionally discovered another use of the serious art. Not only could it accelerate the absorption of star energy, it could also form a strange defensive force field around his body that weakened the enemy's attacks. He'd thought that this was the most powerful aspect of the serious art, but now he realized that he still didn't understand it. Not only could it defend, but it could also perfectly display the enemy's battle techniques in front of him. As long as he wanted to, he could learn it. Even he hadn't expected this. Lu Yin clenched his fists in excitement. He'd known that the serious art was heaven-defying when he'd first obtained it, but now he realized that he'd underestimated it. It wasn't just heaven-defying, it shouldn't even exist. It was a technique that imitated the workings of the universe and was extremely powerful. Back on the ground, Xia Luo's eyes widened in shock, but then his lips curled up. Interesting. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 44. Not too far away, Roz stood up with great difficulty with blood dripping from his mouth. The Space Render Palm had hit him without any protection, and at that distance he had been heavily injured. However, this injury wasn't as shocking as Lu Yin's. How did this person know the Sky Beast Claw? Who are you? Roz shouted. Lu Yin landed in front of Roz in a single step. Your captor. He pressed down on Roz's shoulder and squeezed. Roz howled in pain as his shoulder was crushed. Sorry, you'll resist easily if I don't do this. He then tossed Roz towards the capital. The other person shouted, You're dead. He's Sir Roz, the son of Lord Sicker. Lord Sicker won't let you off. The 12 Imperial squadrons won't let you off. The Great Yu Empire won't let you off. Lu Yin frowned, noisy. He crushed the man's shoulder as well and tossed him towards the capital. After dealing with the 2, Lu Yin turned to look at Xiao Luo, who stared back at him. Don't worry, I'm not interested in you. Xiao Luo smiled warmly. Lu Yin nodded. Thank you. Xiao Luo smiled. I'm Xiao Luo, let's get to know each other. Lu Yin. Lu Yin? Xiao Luo was shocked. That's a rare surname in the universe. Lu Yin's eyes narrowed. It was true that the surname Lu was very common on Earth, but in the universe, it represented a different group of people, the primeval surnames. It was a general term for people like him, and the universe had strict checks on people with primeval surnames. No one knew when it had started or when it would end. One of the reasons Lu Yin had come to Earth was to obtain legal status. There were many people with primeval surnames on Earth, and the planet had been monitored by the Great Yu Empire for countless years before it was finally legal. What Lu Yin wanted was a legal identity. The surname Xia is also rare in the universe, Lu Yin said, leaping up and flying back to the capital. Xiao Luo smiled. He was one of those with primeval surnames. Outside of Earth, a huge spaceship was quietly floating in space like a giant beast overlooking Earth. It was brightly lit. The moment Roz was captured, everyone in the spacecraft was in an uproar. There were dozens of people in the huge monitoring room and they were all staring at the screen. The screen was showing the scene of Roz being defeated as well as the scene of Lu Yin crushing his shoulder. Someone was furious. How dare you hurt Prince Rao? Death penalty. You must be sentenced to death. This native is dead. He was the one who killed Vesta 3 months ago. He's the first native to kill a trial student. He robbed so many students before, including Jerlin. Then he captured 23 more and now he dares to harm Sir Roz. This native must be executed, or we won't be able to answer to Lord Sicker. Someone shouted. What did he say? I can't hear anything, damn it. Many people were riled up. Of course, there were also a few who praised Lu Yin's actions. The so-called trial wasn't just for students but also for natives. Many of the Empire's elites came from native planets, and this was the Empire's way of unearthing talents. This person was definitely a talent, but offending Roz was offending Sicker. Sicker was extremely powerful in the Great Yu Empire, so this native was doomed no matter how outstanding he was. Thump, thump, thump. The sound of footsteps rang out. Although it was very light, it exploded in everyone's ears, causing the originally noisy monitoring room to fall silent. Everyone stepped aside and looked respectfully at the 3 men who gradually walked over. The leader was a middle-aged man with a solemn expression. He wore armor and had a gaze as deep as the sea. His name was Sigmund Mathers, a general of the Great Yu Empire and the person in charge of Earth's trial. On his right was a pale-faced young man with weak footsteps and a cold aura. He looked weak, but he was actually the vice-captain of the 9th Imperial Squadron, Tori Anna. On Sigmund's left was a man with a gloomy expression and cold eyes. His face was branded with strange patterns, and he was 2 meters tall with arms longer than a normal person's. He was Shalash, the vice-captain of the 12th Squadron. He was also the protector of Roz's trial. These 3 were the people in charge of this trial and they were all space-exploring powerhouses. When the 3 arrived, everyone backed away and stood respectfully on both sides. The 3 of them walked straight to the light screen and watched the replay of the scene. Stop. Sigmund barked and the image stopped. It showed Lu Yin using the Sky Beast Claw. Sigmund was shocked. He can use the Sky Beast Claw without even looking at the stone wall. It's not just an imitation, it's a perfect representation. This person is a genius. Shalash's eyes narrowed, his gaze cold. Continue. The image quickly stopped, and the last scene was of Lu Yin crushing Roz's shoulder. Shalash grinned and licked his lips cruelly, ruthless and gutsy. Did you find out where this person came from? Sigmund barked. Someone stepped forward and respectfully reported, General, this person is not on the list of students participating in the trial. Nonsense, he killed Vesta immediately, so there's no way he's a student participating in this trial. Go back 10 years and see if anyone crossed the blockade to Earth, Sigmund barked. General, we've checked and there's not even 30 years in the past. Sigmund frowned. Looks like the Empire's monitoring station needs to be reorganized. This person used both the shockwave palm and space render palm, so he's obviously from outer space. He's also quite young, but you said you didn't find anything. The surroundings were silent and everyone was apprehensive. Most of them were from the monitoring station. Record everything about this person. Once the trial is over, we'll capture him, Shalosh suddenly said. On the other side, Tori Anna raised his eyebrows. Capture? Why? Shalosh's gaze was cold. Shouldn't he be captured for trespassing on a trial planet? Tori Anna sneered. Earth may be under the Empire's surveillance, but it's still free. Anyone can enter, and the monitoring station can only blame their incompetence for not discovering anything. Are you going to blame the floor for tripping? Shalosh stared at Tori Anna. What do you mean? Are you trying to stop the 12th Squadron from carrying out their mission? I've never heard of the 12th Squadron interfering with a trial, Tori Anna said disdainfully. The surrounding people watched on nervously. Both of them belonged to the 13 squadrons and were vice captains, so when they spoke they didn't even dare to breathe. Sigmund waved his hand. All right, Shalosh, I know you're under orders to protect Roz, but a trial is a trial. The results will speak for themselves. Shalosh sneered. Fine, you're the person in charge of the trial and have the right to make the decision. I can only report this to the captain and have him decide. Sigmund's gaze turned even colder. At that moment, light footsteps could be heard, just like when Sigmund and the other two had appeared. The footsteps were light, but they exploded in everyone's ears. Everyone looked towards the passage where a woman had appeared. The first thing they saw was a head of white hair that flowed down to her ankles, accentuating her snowy white feet. She looked pure, her eyes bright and her pupils slightly red. She wore a cool summer dress, her skin sparkling, and her hair was tied up in a small ponytail. She looked very cute, but the most attractive thing about her wasn't her appearance, but the ring on her finger. It was a black ring with silver edges, and there were engravings of flying wings and swords. Around it were 10 black shadows. This was the ring of authority of the Universe Youth Council. The woman was called Mira, and she was from the Universe Youth Council. She represented the council in the trial of the planet's evolution. Seeing Myra's arrival, Sigmund and the other two looked grim, especially Shalosh. That was because Myra's red eyes were glaring at him, and the immense pressure almost made Shalosh kneel down. Mira turned to Sigmund with a faint smile. I heard that someone tried to interfere with the trial. Is that true, General Sigmund? Shalosh's heart trembled and he lowered his head. He was a vice-captain of the Great U Empire's 13 squadrons and an explorer, but he had to lower his head in front of a young woman. This was Myra's strength as well as the strength of the Universe Youth Council. Sigmund solemnly replied, Thank you for your supervision, Miss Mira, but there's no such thing at the moment. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 45. Mira smiled. That's good. I wasn't supposed to be here, but it's a pity that the Great U Empire's Youth Council has been banned. I'm the one who announced the ban, so I can't shirk my responsibility. After all, the Youth Council can't be absent. What do you think, General Mathers? Sigmund nodded. Thank you for your hard work, Miss Mira. Mira smiled and looked at the screen. He's not bad. I hope he does well. She then turned and left the monitoring room, leaving behind a delicate fragrance. After Mira left, everyone took in deep breaths. That mountain-like pressure had descended upon them. That woman had been too terrifying, and her strength had definitely surpassed everyone present. She was just a student, and even though she was from the Innerverse, she was still a student. Why was she so strong? Tori Anna spoke up. Mira, a subordinate of the Universe Youth Council and a student of Astral 6. People call her the Red Lotus Witchbow, but I didn't expect her to be so strong. Sigmund let out a sigh and didn't discuss Mira with Toli. Instead, he turned his attention back to the screen. Mira had saved this young man, and if he could perform a little better, he might be able to get her help. What a lucky young man. Shalosh's eyes were hazy. He had actually been intimidated by a woman, and his heart was filled with rage. Tori Anna looked at him and smiled disdainfully. So what if he was angry? Would he dare to attack Mira? Her strength aside, she had the support of the Universe Youth Council, and there were 10 freaks there. Outside the capital on Earth, Xiao Luo left without saying anything to Lu Yin and the rest. He didn't even fly, instead just walking on the ground towards the wandering corpse tide. Lu Yin looted Roz and the other man. Roz lived up to his title as the son of the vice-treasurer. He was rich indeed. He had found almost 12 cubes of star crystals and many other natural crystals in his cosmic ring, shocking Geraldine and the rest. You're dead. Everything about me is being monitored by the Empire's surveillance stations. You're dead. My father definitely knows that you'll be put on trial after this trial, and I'll make you beg for death. Roz's eyes widened in anger as he slumped to the ground. Lu Yin smiled. I'm looking forward to it. Roz's eyes flickered. A native was a native. He would know what despair felt like when the trial came. Let me ask you, what battle technique did you use at the beginning? Lu Yin stared at Roz as he asked. Roz sneered. A mere native like you actually has ideas about the Sky Beast Claw? Well, it doesn't matter if I tell you. The Great Yu Empire's Yu Academy has 108 forms of the Sky Beast Claw, and I've only grasped 5 of them. If you have the ability, why don't you go to Yu Academy and grasp all 108 forms? You'll definitely be able to shake the heavens. Lu Yin sighed. You've only grasped 5 of the 108 forms. Your aptitude is pretty poor. Roz was furious. I'm Sicker's son. I'm a genius. Even Gerbach and the others have only grasped less than half of it. What does a native like you know? That kind of peerless battle technique isn't something an ordinary person can grasp. You're talking about this? Lu Yin raised a hand and his palm transformed into a claw. The faint roar of a beast could be heard in the void as an enormous pressure was released, causing the surrounding rocks to shatter. At this moment Zhang Dingtian and the others felt fear. Roz gritted his teeth. This bastard had actually mastered the 3rd form of the Sky Beast Claw. If he had used the 5th form of the Sky Beast Claw on him, would he have been able to master it as well? Roz felt a chill run down his spine. This kind of person had to be killed. With Lu Yin's help, 25 students from the capital had been arrested, including Roz, who was the son of a powerful family. Geraldine looked at the network and counted. There are 62 people in the second batch and 15 of them landed in China. Although the number was much smaller than the first batch, the quality was completely different. Any one of them had the power of a peak sentinel, and of the 7 sages only the 3 high sages could take them on. Even Zhang Dingtian wasn't confident that he could easily defeat an expert like Roz. Sometimes battle techniques could make up for a huge gap. Many battle techniques couldn't be expressed by their power level. Northern Europe was covered in snow and wind. The picturesque region of peaceful times was now covered in snow and countless zombies were frozen. The entire region was a vast expanse of white and there was no blood. It was like a paradise. Several meteors crashed into Northern Europe, and one of them landed on Otto Island, an island within the Nordic Bay. The bay was sealed in ice and not a single person could be seen within 100 miles of the island. The spacecraft crashed into the island, creating a cone-shaped crater in the ground. The hatch opened and a young man walked out, exhaling as the white air froze and fell to the ground. The man cursed, "Damn random, where did they throw me? It's so cold, it can't be the coldest place on this planet, can it?" He walked out and looked around, cursing non-stop. Opening his gadget, the man's expression suddenly changed. There was a combat power display a few kilometers away from him. The man immediately flew towards it. Soon he saw a figure sitting on a snowy peak in the distance, staring blankly at the sky as if he had lost his mind. The man floated in the air and looked down. "Hey, where is this?" The person below looked at him. "I don't know." The man's gaze turned cold. "What did you say? You don't know? What are you doing here?" "Hiding," the figure said indifferently. The man landed and walked behind the figure. "Your power level isn't weak, 2300. You don't have a gadget, are you a native?" The figure turned to look at him. "Can you do me a favor? Post a message on the local network." The man was puzzled. "What message?" The figure's lips curled up. "Just say that you've seen a fugitive." "What?" The man was shocked and immediately attacked, but the next moment, all his strength was drained away. The figure in front of him with a power level of 2300 suddenly erupted with incomparable power, crushing him. This was the power of a melder and his gadget kept ringing. "Thank you," the figure said indifferently before turning to look into the distance. A few minutes later, Earth's local network exploded as everyone received a message saying that a fugitive was hiding in Northern Europe and that he was a melder. They were asking for help. At first, no one believed it, as who would announce a fugitive's whereabouts? This was a mission after all. However, when the message described the fugitive's appearance in detail, it was confirmed. After all, Eddie and the others had fought with the fugitive in Europe's Mediterranean Sea. The news was immediately verified, and many students hurriedly flew to Northern Europe. In Beijing, Zhou Xian and the rest were shocked. A fugitive is hiding in Northern Europe and his whereabouts are public? That doesn't sound right. Geraldine explained, not all students care about a trial mission. Anything that happens during a trial can affect the final score. For example, if someone loses or wins, it can affect the final score. This student admitted that he couldn't defeat the fugitive, so he might as well announce the fugitive's whereabouts in order to get a good score. Zhou Xian looked at Eddie. You fought with the fugitive, how strong was he? Ever since Zhou Xian had captured Roz, Eddie had become much more well-behaved. He's very strong. Even if a space-exploring powerhouse's power level is weak, their understanding of battle techniques and their use of star energy are not weak. There were more than 10 of us attacking him, but he killed 5 of us in an instant before escaping. That person said that the fugitive was a melder. Is that true? Geraldine asked. Eddie replied, not when we fought him. Otherwise we wouldn't have dared to approach him. Zhou Xian muttered to himself, feeling that something was off. How could someone who could escape from the innerverse to the outerverse be so easily discovered by students? Look, there's a student approaching Northern Europe. Geraldine exclaimed, and everyone looked at the network. From Northern Europe, 3 students flew over. 2 were from the first batch of trial takers and 1 was from the second batch. The 3 of them appeared at the same time. The second batch of trial students were clearly much stronger than the first batch of trial students, so the 2 students didn't dare to approach. Where's the fugitive? The first student shouted. The other 2 students were searching for the fugitive as well, but they suddenly fell to the ground and crashed into the snow. The second batch student also fell to the ground. Not far away, a man slowly walked over. His footsteps were gentle, but every step he took gave off an indescribable pressure that caused the 3 students to tremble. The 3 of them looked up and saw a man wearing a ring armor looking down at them. The disdain in his eyes couldn't be concealed. His short black hair was mixed with white hair. He looked very strange and gave off a gloomy feeling. Let me introduce myself. I'm Qingyu, the fugitive you're talking about. The man smiled, and under the shocked gazes of the 3 students, his star energy exploded and knocked them unconscious. For is far from enough, Qingyu muttered to himself, looking into the distance expectantly. Over the next 2 days, the network shook as no less than 12 students were captured by the fugitive. The fugitive's name was revealed for the first time. Qingyu. Thank you for your tips. Update at 2 p.m. Thank you. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 46. Most of the students had only known of the fugitive's existence when they accepted the mission before the trial, but they knew nothing about the fugitive. The mission had clearly stated that they had to search for the fugitive themselves, but only now did they know the fugitive's name. On the 3rd day, all the students were shocked by the appearance of a woman in the skies above Northern Europe. Hu Shaoling was the heir to the Hu family of the Great Yu Empire. She had long, fiery red hair that reached her waist, and was as beautiful as a fairy. Her status in the Great Yu Empire was even higher than Ra's, as the Hu family was a huge family. More than 10 students who had been hiding around Northern Europe all appeared the moment she appeared. They hadn't dared to reveal themselves because of Qingyu's strength, but now they dared to. Hu Shaoling was a melder, and although her cultivation had been sealed during the trial, a melder was still a melder. Sentinels couldn't compare to her. Qingyu stood up when he saw Hu Shaoling, his eyes shining. What an exquisite woman. I didn't think there would be such a beauty in the fringe weaves, huh? Hu Shaoling looked down and saw Qingyu standing there casually with 12 bound students behind him. I'm so heavily injured that I can't even use my melder power. I can only use my star energy to intimidate others. Surrender yourself, Qingyu, she said coldly. Qingyu's lips curled up. How arrogant. I like this kind of woman. He then stomped on the ground and an iron rod flew out. He casually swung it at Hu Shaoling, who frowned and dodged. Behind her, Qingyu had appeared at some point and caught the rod before swinging it downwards. The trajectory of the rod was clear, but Hu Shaoling felt as if she couldn't avoid it. Hu Xiaoling sensed danger and ignited the flames around her body. The cry of a phoenix soared into the sky and burned everything in its path, shocking everyone who saw it. The snow on the ground melted in an instant, and even the sky was scorched red. Qingyu retreated with his rod and looked at her in shock. He then grew excited, an innate gift of fire. "Woman, you have the right to follow me." Hu Xiaoling's gaze was cold as she slowly raised a finger and pointed at him. A phoenix soared into the sky. Phoenix spirit finger. Beep, 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 beep. In the distance, several students looked at their gadgets and their faces changed. 4,100 combat power. Qingyu smirked. Not bad. That finger is enough to make a normal melder retreat. It's a pity that you met me, Qingyu Day-Night. He then spun his Qingyu iron staff, causing countless iron rods to appear and cover the sky. The entire world was plunged into darkness, and one of the iron rods pierced the phoenix with enough force to pierce through the sky. It then struck Hu Xiaoling's shoulder and sent her crashing into the ground. With a bang, the ground trembled. The melted snow formed a river and Hu Xiaoling fell into it. In the sky, Qingyu raised his head and looked around with his iron rod in hand. The spectating students immediately fled. Even Hu Xiaoling had been defeated, so they didn't dare to approach. Hu Xiaoling was one of the rare melders in this trial. Soon Hu Xiaoling crawled to the ground, drenched in sweat. Her face was pale as she looked at Qingyu, who was slowly walking over. "Day-Night, this surname. Which family are you from?" Qingyu crouched down and reached out to hook her delicate chin with a finger. He smiled. "You actually know? Looks like you're not ignorant. If you know, then you should know what this surname represents. You're qualified to be my woman. Think about it and I'll take you away from this weave." Hu Xiaoling slapped Qingyu's hand away and clutched her shoulder, enduring the pain as she panted. "Your arrest warrant came from the Immerse. If you're really from that family, then who would dare put you on the wanted list?" Qingyu grabbed her hair and lifted her up. He looked at her furious gaze and said coldly, "Don't be so agitated. You're going to be eliminated just because you're a melder. Don't you want to join Astral 10? Hu Xiaoling's heart sank, and the vast amount of star energy around her began to recede. Qingyu sneered, "Just watch, it'll all be over soon." He then threw her towards the bound students. 13 now. This one seems to be quite strong. Qingyu was right. Hu Xiaoling wasn't just strong, she was quite strong. The moment she was captured, Sigmund had almost charged into Earth himself, but Mira had stopped him. No one is allowed to interfere during the trial. This is a decision made by the Universe Youth Council. General Sigmund, are you trying to openly defy the Council's decision? Mira looked at Sigmund indifferently. Sigmund's expression changed. "Miss Mira, please forgive me, but Hu Xiaoling is Captain Hu Qingshan's daughter. Nothing can happen to her." Mira narrowed her eyes. "I know, but so what? She could have broken the seal on her own. Her fate is her own choice." Sigmund took a deep breath and looked at Mira. The two looked at each other. In the end, Sigmund gave up. In front of the Universe Youth Council, even the Great Yu Empire wasn't worth mentioning, let alone Hu Qingshan. They had destroyed more than one or two powerful organizations, and the Great Yu Empire didn't want to follow in their footsteps. Mira's gaze went past Sigmund to the screen, especially Qingyu. The battle technique he had used just now was very familiar. News of Hu Xiaoling's capture had already been broadcasted on the local network, and the students who had been rushing towards Northern Europe immediately stopped and gathered together. In the capital, Eddie was shocked. "Even Hu Xiaoling has been captured, how are we supposed to complete the mission?" Lu Yin was puzzled. "Hu Xiaoling? Is she powerful?" Eddie nodded. "In terms of combat power, she should be the strongest student in this trial. She's a melder." Lu Yin's expression changed. "A melder? She's not just a melder, she also has an innate gift of fire. Her father is Hu Qingshan, captain of the 5th Squadron of the 13 Imperial Squadrons. He can hunt in outer space and his combat power is enough to blow up gadgets. Under his tutelage, Hu Xiaoling is the absolute elite of the Great Yu Empire's younger generation. I never thought that even she would be defeated," Eddie continued. Only Eddie, Geraldine, and the other students were shocked by the news of Hu Xiaoling's capture. Although Lu Yin was surprised, his focus was now on the students who were slowly approaching him. Not long after, 3 students appeared outside the capital. They were from the second batch, and although they weren't from Yu Academy, They were still elites from powerful planets that could rival or even surpass Eddie. It was a pity that they couldn't escape from Lu Yin's grasp and had all been captured. He had already captured 28 people, which was quite a lot. At this time, 2 more people arrived outside the capital, Zhou and Balarer, who had been hiding on the sidelines. Zhang Dingtian was about to make a move, but Lu Yin stopped him. "What are you doing here?" "I'll return your armor to you once the trial is over," Lu Yin said loudly. Zhou's mouth twitched, but she forced a smile. "I want to join you." Lu Yin was puzzled. "What? Join us? What do you mean?" "Literally, I want to join you." Zhou raised her head, looking like she was saying that they should be honored to have her. Lu Yin muttered, "Why should we take you in?" Zhou was furious. "What do you mean take me in? Don't you know how to talk? I said I'll work with you." "Why?" Lu Yin didn't hold back. Zhou gritted her teeth. "Qingyu's a melder, 1 or 2 students won't be able to deal with him. His things are in the capital, so he'll definitely return. We'll work together to deal with him." Lu Yin thought about it and found her words reasonable. Qingyu seemed to be difficult to deal with, and it would be troublesome if he really did return to the capital. The more people there were, the safer. "Right, come in. But I'm warning you, don't try anything funny or I'll tie you up." Zhou snorted and brought Balarer into the capital. She really didn't have any ulterior motives. Qingyu was putting too much pressure on the students, and they had to work together to deal with him. This was the only way to complete the mission, and many of the students from Northern Europe had already joined forces. She couldn't fight alone, so it was better to work with the natives instead of splitting the results. Outside the capital, Xia Luo didn't go far, instead walking amidst the zombie tide. Strangely, the zombies didn't attack him as if they couldn't sense him at all. Xia Luo's expression didn't change during the 3 days he spent with the zombies, seemingly observing something. After a while, Xia Luo stood in place and sighed. "I can feel their auras, they're everywhere. How troublesome." Far to the south of the capital, a beautiful woman with long green hair and wearing a green robe was slowly flying towards the north. The woman was dressed in green, and even her boots were green. There were exquisite patterns engraved on them, and she gave off a refreshing aura. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 47. That night, Eddie was thrown back into the prison and replaced by Roz. This person's identity wasn't simple at all. Many students contacted Lu Yin, offering to trade for him, but he rejected them all. Roz's value was far greater than those resource crystals. Roz was violently thrown to the ground, not far from the defensive wall being built by the cultivators of the Chinese camp. "Zhou, why are you here?" Roz exclaimed in shock. She beamed at him. "I'm sorry, Senior Roz, I was captured too." Roz was furious. This damned brat was lying through her teeth. How did she look like she was captured? "Hold on, you're the mastermind behind this? No wonder you dared to kidnap me, you've got guts. Don't think you'll be fine just because your brother is protecting you, my father is sicker." Zhou blinked innocently. "Senior Roz, don't accuse me wrongly, I don't have the ability to control them. You can ask the others if you don't believe me, I was also robbed by him." Roz didn't believe her at all. He didn't believe that a mere native would dare to attack him. That native was unexpectedly strong, but so what? Without a certain background, no matter how talented he was still an ant. "Another student is approaching," Geraldine exclaimed. Lu Yin and the rest looked into the distance to see a figure rapidly approaching, eventually hovering above the capital and looking down at them. Roz was delighted to see the newcomer. "Senior Munoer, it's Senior Munoer. I'm here." Zhou's expression changed. "Why is it him? He's here too? You know him?" Lu Yin was curious. She replied solemnly, "Munoer, an elite of Yu Academy who once competed with my brother. Although he doesn't take him seriously anymore, he's still one of the few melders in Yu Academy." Everyone's hearts sank at the mention of a melder. There had to be a melder in the second batch, and Hu Shaoling was one of them. They had thought that it would be difficult to meet a melder, but one had actually appeared here. Munoer looked down and scanned the capital, his eyes lighting up when he saw Roz. He had come for Roz's father, Sicker. As long as he could save Roz, he would be able to board Sicker's ship and have no worries in the Great Yu Empire. "Native, release Mr. Roz." Munoer shouted. a shockwave dispersing the clouds and pressing down on the survivors. Roz was overjoyed. Lu Yin frowned and prepared to attack. So what if he was a melder? A sealed melder might not be able to compare to him. At that moment Zhang Dingtian walked out, his gaze calm. Leave this to me. Lu Yin's eyes flashed. Ever since he'd saved everyone a few days ago, Zhang Dingtian had rarely made a move. Whenever a student came, it was Lu Yin who defeated or captured them. Geraldine, Jerlin, and the rest were all focused on Lu Yin, and even Eddie and the rest had almost forgotten about Zhang Dingtian. He was a realm breaker, the number one of the 7 sages, and had his own pride. The capital was supposed to be under his protection, but now that it was being protected by someone else, he was eager to fight. Bai Shui looked at Zhang Dingtian worriedly. These extraterrestrial students' battle techniques were unpredictable, and their control of their strength was far superior to theirs. Zhang Dingtian could easily crush an ordinary student, but this time he was facing a peerless elite. Roz was disdainful. Lu Yin might have been worth watching, but a mere native dared to challenge a melder. Even if a melder's cultivation was sealed, a sentinel still couldn't compare to a mere native. Lu Yin nodded. Be careful. Zhang Dingtian's gaze turned cold and he took to the skies to face Munoer. Jerlin's eyes lit up. Roz and the rest didn't know, but the first batch of students knew that the greatest threat to them back then wasn't Lu Yin, but the number one of the 7 sages. He was a rare realm breaker who had guarded the capital alone, and even Jerlin had been forced to retreat. Munoer looked arrogantly at the rising Zhang Ding, Scram native. He waved his hand, sending a surge of star energy towards a single direction. It wasn't scattered like a normal sentinel, but rather concentrated in a single direction. This was an unconscious control, but it was clear that a melder's control of star energy had long since reached the pinnacle. Zhang Dingtian's gaze was resolute as he raised his blade and slashed out, tearing through the star energy and heading straight for Munoer. Munoer, who didn't care about Zhang Dingtian at first, was shocked. He raised his hand and clawed at the attack, shattering it. Interesting. A mere native is actually as strong as an ordinary member of U Academy. No, it's slightly stronger. Are you a realm breaker? Seeing Munoer's astonished expression, Zhang Dingtian raised his sword and slashed at him again, but the attack was shattered. Zhang Dingtian was a realm breaker who was stronger than Eddie and could fight Roz on equal footing. However, against a melder like Munoer whose cultivation had been sealed, Zhang Dingtian's attacks were completely ineffective. Munoer was a true melder, and even if his cultivation had been sealed and he couldn't display the strength of a melder, he could still use his star energy and battle techniques. He wasn't someone Zhang Dingtian could match. Bang! Munoer's palm turned into a claw and hit the blade with a loud noise, causing a crack to appear on the blade. The force traveled along the blade to Zhang Dingtian's arm, shattering the sleeves on his arm. Munoer had intended to shatter the blade with this attack, but he had failed. Zhang Dingtian had miraculously neutralized part of the force at the critical moment, saving his blade and preventing himself from being injured even more severely. Zhang Dingtian spat out a mouthful of blood and retreated, raising his blade high as he roared and unleashing a terrifying attack. His body inexplicably disappeared, leaving only an afterimage behind. Roving steps. Lu Yin was shocked. Zhang Dingtian had actually learned the roving steps. Everyone stared blankly at the sky. There were 2 Zhang Dingtians? Roz's jaw dropped. No way, a native was actually fighting so well against Munoer? Munoer had even used the Sky Beast Claw, but he still hadn't been able to defeat him. How was this possible? Since when were natives so crazy? A realm breaker? A native planet actually had a realm breaker? High up in the sky, Munoer's gaze turned cold as he waved his hand to disperse the afterimage. He turned around and swept out with his leg, causing a violent gale to distort the air. The shockwave slammed into the ground, shattering the earth. At this moment, Zhang Dingtian appeared beside Munoer and slashed out with his blade. Countless people, including Jerlin and the others, tensed up as they watched this scene in shock. This Zhang Dingtian was truly heaven-defying to be able to contend with Munoer. Zhang Dingtian's pupils shrank as Munoer's figure disappeared in front of him. He instinctively used his sword to block behind him. With a bang, the sword shattered and a terrifying force slammed into Zhang Dingtian's body, smashing him into the ground. Everyone was silent as Munoer appeared in the sky with a gloomy expression. A mere native had not only forced him to use the sky beast claw, but also his footwork battle technique. It was inconceivable. Everyone looked at the ground outside the city, where dust rose into the sky. Zhou sighed. This was more like it. If this native had defeated Munoer, it would have been a complete reversal. Natives couldn't possibly be heaven-defying. It's your turn, she said to Lu Yin. He pointed outside the city. It's not over yet. Do you want to send him to his death? This native can't defeat Munoer, he can't even hurt him. Lu Yin narrowed his eyes. I don't like the word native. Humph. Zhou snorted and turned away. Zhou Xian and Wuxia appeared as well, looking worriedly outside the city. Bai Shui clenched her fists, the cold around her threatening. Roz stared blankly at Bai Shui. He'd already noticed her beauty and wanted to bring her back as a maid, but what was this? Innate gift? What native planet? There were even cultivators with innate gifts, realm breakers, and that freak who'd defeated him? There were all sorts of things here. When the dust settled, Zhang Dingtian appeared before everyone with a broken blade in hand. His body was covered in wounds, but he stood straight and stared resolutely at the sky as he slowly rose into the air. Munoer's brows rose. You're brave. What's your name? Zhang Dingtian. Munoer praised. Follow me, I'll take you to Yu Academy. You're qualified, how about it? Not interested, Zhang Dingtian replied coldly, tightening his grip on the broken blade. Munoer burst into laughter. You want to fight me with this broken blade? Let me tell you, there's no way to make up for the difference between us. You'll only lose against me. That's not necessarily true. Zhang Dingyin, here's something for you, Lu Yin shouted from below, tossing Zhou's ring armor over. Zhang Dingtian caught it instinctively and looked at Lu Yin suspiciously. Lu Yin explained, your battle wasn't fair to begin with. He's a melder and you're just a sentinel, don't be so stubborn. Zhang Dingtian's eyes flashed and he put on the armor, covering his entire body with lightning. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 48. Zhou flew into a rage and glared viciously at him. Bastard, how dare you give my clothes to someone else, you shameless, despicable person. Lu Yin waved. Don't mind me, I'll return them to you. Zhou was exasperated. No, I'm sweaty and disgusting. You can use them as your coffin money. Lu Yin ignored her. High up in the sky, Zhang Dingtian felt a surge of power as he watched the lightning envelop his body. He remembered that Lu Yin had used this armor to capture so many students a few days ago, a testament to its sturdy defense. Across from him, Munoer's expression darkened. Zhubaka's belongings. He glanced at Zhou and narrowed his eyes. Zhubaka's sister is here as well, I'll teach her a lesson. He then charged downwards. Zhang Dingtian snorted and slashed out with his broken blade. Even though it was broken, it didn't affect the attack at all. You're courting death. Munoer roared as he swiped his claw at Zhang Dingtian. The void beast's roar caused everyone to tremble. This claw contained 7 forms and it surpassed even Ra's sky beast claw. Normally it would be enough to kill Zhang Dingtian. Zhang Dingtian growled in the face of such a terrifying battle technique, blood trickling down the corner of his mouth. His broken blade trembled rapidly, distorting the air as a strange force field gathered around the blade. The sky became inexplicably oppressive as Zhang Dingtian slashed out to meet the sky beast claw. Boom! The clouds in the sky trembled as a huge shockwave swept across the capital, tearing the earth apart as the attack sliced through the city's outer walls. Scarlet blood splattered across the sky and onto the ruins. Zhang Dingtian's armor shattered as his body was blasted towards the ground, but Lu Yin caught him in the nick of time. Even so, Zhang Dingtian's injuries were too severe to help, and his broken blade had been shattered. However, no one dared to underestimate Zhang Dingtian now, as he had injured Munoer with a single slash. High up in the sky, Munoer stared at Zhang Dingtian in shock as blood dripped from his right arm and his fingers trembled. He was a dignified melder, an elite of Yu Academy who had once fought against Zhubak and the others, but now he had been injured by a native and forced back 100 meters. This was inconceivable, even if his cultivation had been sealed. No one would have believed him, but now not even the 7th form of the Sky Beast Claw had been able to kill this native. On the ground, Lu Yin was equally shocked. Zhang Dingtian hadn't been killed by the claw attack, and his blade had even been infused with the shockwave palm. Zhang Dingtian was a genius, and his blade was comparable to Lu Yin's serious palm. When he first met Zhang Dingtian, his serious palm could only operate 2 stars, which was slightly weaker than Zhang Dingtian's. However, after he started operating 3 stars, he surpassed Zhang Dingtian. The 3-star serious palm was on par with Ra's 5 forms of the Sky Beast Claw. Munoer's Sky Beast Claw was obviously stronger than Ra's. Zhang Dingtian was lucky that he didn't die. If not for this armor, he would have died. Raz was stunned. Where did this abnormal native come from? Bai Shui and the rest quickly took Zhang Dingtian away for treatment. It was quite impressive that he could fight to this extent. His opponent was an elite of the Great Yu Empire, and they had only started cultivating for a short period of time. Lu Yin soared into the air and looked at Munoer. Your next opponent is me. Munoer glared at Lu Yin with a bone-chilling gaze. He wanted to get back at this native for the humiliation he had just suffered. Outside of Earth, in the control room of a giant spacecraft, everyone stared at the screen in shock. They all knew who Munoer was. There were only a few people who had reached the Melder realm in this evolutionary trial, and he could be considered one of the strongest. But now he had been injured by a native. Their shock was no less than Munoer's. There was a loud bang and everyone turned to look. It was Sigmund Mathers. The general's eyes were filled with excitement. A realm breaker. I never thought that there would be someone like this on this planet. Does he lack battle techniques? He'll definitely be able to fight Munoer even better. Our army wants him, huh? To the side, Shalosh licked his lips. My apologies, General Mathers, but the 12th Squadron wants him. Sigmund was furious. The 12th Squadron's main job isn't to fight. This person clearly has an extremely high talent for battle. He was able to imitate the roving step technique in a short period of time and even fuse the shockwave palm into his blade. He's definitely a genius. On the other side, Tori Anna spoke up. General Mathers is right, this person is indeed a genius. The Anna family is willing to remodel his body, but he should be given to the 9th Squadron. The argument between the three quickly grew louder and louder. Everyone looked enviously at the heavily injured man on the screen. As long as he didn't die in the trial, his future would be bright. A realm breaker was a genius, and if they remembered correctly, there was also a cultivator with an innate gift of ice in this group. With the mysterious person who had captured Raz, this group wasn't simple at all. While the three were bickering, Mira looked at the screen and saw that Lu Yin and Munoer were fighting. Zhang Dingtian's outburst had injured Munoer, and he was now like a wild beast trying to inflict all the damage on the natives. Lu Yin was the first, so he used the 7 forms of the Sky Beast Claw. He thought that he would be able to defeat Lu Yin easily, but Lu Yin's performance was even more monstrous than Zhang Dingtian's. The Sky Beast Claw covered an entire area, and even the 7 forms weren't something a sentinel could dodge. However, Lu Yin was able to do so easily. Munoer stared at Lu Yin in shock. This person was even more difficult to deal with than the previous one. Lu Yin's gaze turned solemn as he activated the serious art. Munoer attacked again and disappeared, but Lu Yin immediately used the roving step to vanish as well. The next moment, claw shadows flashed and forced Lu Yin out. The Sky Beast Claw was less than 20 centimeters away from him. Lu Yin could feel the power of the Sky Beast Claw, but his eyes were focused on all of its transformations. He dodged to the side and slapped at Munoer at the same time. This was only the Space Render Palm, a battle technique that Munoer couldn't even be bothered to dodge. The Sky Beast Claw was invincible, tearing apart the Space Render Palm and attacking again. Lu Yin's eyes widened as he watched it 3 times. It was enough. Munoer had thought it would be the Space Render Palm again. It was rare for a sentinel to use it so proficiently, but it couldn't hurt him at all. Munoer's scalp went numb, and his pupils shrank as Lu Yin's palm turned into a claw. This was the 7th form of the Sky Beast Claw. Bang! Munoer crashed into the ground like a meteor, blood spraying out and dyeing the ground red. Everyone stared blankly at the scene. Munoer had actually been heavily injured. Raz's heart sank. He had forgotten that this native could imitate the Sky Beast Claw. Bai Shui and the rest stared at Lu Yin in shock. This person was becoming more and more terrifying by the day. On the ground, Munor's face was pale and his eyes were filled with shock as the blood in his abdomen expanded and dyed his clothes red. However, his attention wasn't on his injuries, but rather the battle technique this person had used. There was no mistaking it. It was the 7th form of the Sky Beast Claw. "How do you know the Sky Beast Claw?" he shouted, staring at Lu Yin. "I learned it from you," Lu Yin said indifferently as he landed on the ground. "Impossible, no one can learn the Sky Beast Claw so quickly. I spent 9 months in Yu Academy and only learned the 7th form. How did you do it so quickly?" Munor questioned. "Who are you? Where did you learn the Sky Beast Claw from?" "I've already told you, there's nothing I can do if you don't believe me," Lu Yin replied indifferently as he leapt towards Munor again. The 7th form of the Sky Beast Claw came crashing down, accompanied by a deafening roar that caused the air to distort. Munor gritted his teeth. His cultivation had been sealed, and the 7th form was the strongest attack he could use right now. It should have been invincible, but now he was facing the same attack. More importantly, his attacks were useless against this person who could easily dodge them. Boom! The ground trembled as a giant claw print appeared on the surface and deeply imprinted itself into the ground. Munor immediately flew away, admitting defeat. Unless he broke the seal and regained his melder strength, there was no way he could defeat this person. This person also had the power of a realm breaker. No, this person definitely wasn't a native, or else he wouldn't have been able to use the Space Render Palm. Who exactly was this person? Lu Yin stood on the ground and watched Munor's departing figure with a sigh of relief. A melder gave off a lot of pressure, and if Munor broke the seal he could instantly injure or even kill Lu Yin. Even if Munor was expelled from the trial, it wouldn't be enough to save Lu Yin's life. Lu Yin didn't want to push someone like this too far. His biggest gain today was the 7th form of the Sky Beast Claw. This battle technique from Yu Academy was truly powerful. Did it have a total of 108 forms? He wondered how powerful it would be if he learned all of them, but he was looking forward to it. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 49. Within the capital, Roz's heart was dead. Even Munor had been defeated and there was no one to save him. He was destined to be at the bottom of the trial. Geraldine stared at Lu Yin in disbelief, recalling the first time she'd met him. A mere seeker, but now he was practically invincible among sentinels. Just what was his background? Yada Pagoda Planet Academy? His grandfather was the dean? Could it be that his grandfather was a peerless expert? Munuo was very famous among the trial students. When the news of Munuo's defeat spread through the LAN, it shocked all the students. Their first reaction was disbelief, but the LAN would not lie. Zhou confirmation of the matter made the students pay more attention to the power protecting the capital. The only melders that had appeared were Hua Xiaoling and Munor, but both had been defeated. This trial wasn't simple at all. Not long after, a few more students were captured by Qingyu. Lu Yin counted 17. That fugitive took 17 students. Bai Shui looked at him in confusion. What are you counting for? Lu Yin's expression turned ugly. He's stealing the kill. Everyone was speechless. Lu Yin took a deep breath. He's not stupid, he's thinking the same thing as us. He wants to use the students in exchange for some compromise, but our natures are different. He's a fugitive and we're natives. He's destined to be judged, so it doesn't matter how many students he captures. Then it's fine, it has nothing to do with you, Zhou blinked. Lu Yin looked at her. Every student he captures means one less for us to capture, and we'll have one less bargaining chip in the future. Zhou's eyes went wide. You really want to use the students to negotiate with the Empire? That's impossible. Nothing's impossible, Lu Yin replied matter-of-factly. The students who dare to participate are all elites. They're very important to the Empire. Zhou sneered. Do you know how many students are participating in the trial? Let me tell you, this planet is just one of many, and it won't affect the Empire even if all the students die. Do you think the Empire will compromise with the natives for these students? Dream on. Hearing Zhou's words, Bai Shui, Zhou Xian, and the others' expressions changed. The Great Yu Empire was too big and there were too many students and too many academies to count. The students from Earth's trial were only a small portion, so negotiating with the Empire was impossible. Not necessarily. Lu Yin grabbed Roz. This person's status is enough for us to get some promises. Russ was furious. Let me go. Lu Yin shook him off and smiled. The vice treasurer of the empire. He has a very high position and I heard that he has connections with the 12th Imperial Squadron. That's perfect. The greater his background, the higher our chances of success, right? Jerlin muttered to herself and looked at Roz. That made sense. He was Sicker's only son. Sicker would risk her life for him. Roz glared furiously at Lu Yin. This bastard was actually using him to threaten the empire. Regardless of whether he succeeded or not, he would become the laughingstock of the empire's younger generation. In Northern Europe, a group of students were also furious. More than 20 students from all over the world had gathered together to find Qingyu. The leader of the group was Yen Gang and he was not from the Great Yu Empire. Instead, he was a young powerhouse from the Frostwave Weave's Firesmelt planet. Firesmelt planet was a powerful force that was on par with the Great Yu Empire. Although it was only a single planet, it was massive and covered in a sea of flames. It was rumored that all the creatures on Firesmelt planet had great resistance to fire, and they could even use powerful fire-burning battle techniques. It was a terrifying force. Yen Gang was a melder like Hu Shaoling, and his cultivation had been sealed as well. However, many students felt that he was even stronger than Hu Shaoling. Qingyu let Hu Shaoling go. Yen Gang stood high in the sky and stared down coldly. His body was dark red, and even in the cold of Northern Europe, he emitted a scorching heat that melted the snow on the ground. Qingyu sat leisurely on the ground. Behind him were the 17 captured students, including Hu Shaoling. There's quite a lot of people here. Kid, do you think you can take her from me? Qingyu teased Yen Gang, his eyes full of contempt. He had once been an explorer and these mere students were nothing to him. Yen Gang coldly replied, I'm warning you, Hu Shaoling is the fiancé of Firesmelt Planet's young master Yen Feng. If you touch her, you'll face the wrath of Firesmelt Planet. Qingyu disdainfully replied, It's just a wild border weave, you really think you're so great. However, I'll give you one chance to take her from me. Let's see if you can do it. Speak, Yen Gang growled. Qingyu's lips curled up. Go to the capital and bring me something in exchange for this woman. Yen Gang's eyes flashed. Let Hu Shaoling go first and I'll go get it for you. Qingyu laughed. Are you an idiot or do you think I'm an idiot? Let her go first? Has your brain been burned away by the fire? Yen Gang was furious and clenched his fists, causing the air around him to distort. Fine, I'll bring it over, but you have to promise not to hurt Hu Shaoling. Qingyu shrugged. That depends on how long it takes you to get it. I can't guarantee that she'll be beautiful if you wait too long. Yen Gang was furious. Hu Shaoling is a melder. If you dare touch her, we'll kill you even if we have to break the seal. If you do that, you won't be able to enter Astral 10. The Astral Combat Academy won't accept trash like you if you can't even handle a sentinel mission. How will you explain it to your young master then? Qingyu teased. Yen Gang snorted and whispered to the students behind him, Keep an eye on him, I'm going to China. Miner just left China, can you do it alone? One student asked. He was from the Hua family and didn't care about Yen Gang, but he cared about Hu Shaoling. Yen Gang disdainfully replied, Don't compare me to that kind of trash. With that, he soared into the air, distorting the air in his path, forming a white streak of air. It would take a sentinel at least 2 days to fly from Northern Europe to the capital of China, and that was if there were no mutant beasts in the way. If there were any powerful mutant beasts, the delay would be unpredictable. Only a few places in the capital had light at night to avoid attracting mutant beasts. Lu Yin arrived at the Science and Technology Institute and was led by President Lian to the item left behind by Qingyu. It was a stone about the size of a human head. It was round in shape but had 16 sides, each one smooth and flat with an indecipherable imprint in the middle. The entire stone gave off an ancient aura, as if it had come from ancient times. Bai Shui stood beside Lu Yin. It was her idea to let him see the stone this time. She had strongly objected to Lu Yin touching the items left behind by the fugitive, saying that the 7 sages had to agree. But now there was no need for that. The entire capital was under Lu Yin's protection. Lu Yin looked at the stone in surprise. It's just a stone, but it feels different. How old do you think it is? President Lian asked. Lu Yin shook his head. It's impossible to determine. Impossible to determine. Lu Yin was shocked. It was unbelievable that Earth's current technology couldn't determine the age of a stone. President Lian explained, "This stone has been around for too long and has undergone undetectable changes. It's impossible to determine its age. We've studied it many times, but we haven't been able to find anything." Bai Shui continued, "According to the information we've gathered, the fugitive Qingyu fled from the depths of the universe to here. It's quite a long distance, but he's still wanted. There's only one possibility. He's carrying something too valuable, and it should be this stone." "When you brought him back from Neptune, what else did he have?" Lu Yin asked. Bai Shui looked at President Lian, who explained, "There was a blade and a few dozen crystals, which are actually star crystals. There was also a chip that contained a cultivation method, but it was heavily damaged and most of it can't be read. The sword was just given to Zhang Dingtian, and we've already absorbed the star crystals. We were very close to the realm of sky at the start of the apocalypse," Bai Shui continued. Lu Yin looked at the stone. "So this stone and the sword are the only things Qingyu left behind? We've studied the sword and it's extremely tough, far surpassing any metal on Earth, including mutant metals. As for this stone, we don't have any clues," President Lian said. "Can I study it for a bit?" Lu Yin asked. "Up to you." The president didn't mind. Lu Yin glanced at Xiao Luo before starting. He was sure that if he attacked now, he wouldn't have an easy time. Although these people seemed unprepared, they definitely had their own defensive methods. He stopped thinking about it and dripped a drop of blood onto one side of the stone. As he watched the blood being absorbed, a fist that seemed to pierce through the heavens suddenly appeared in front of him, crossing through time and space to attack him. Wuxia spat out a mouthful of blood, his face pale. He had failed, and so had Zhou Xian. Like a chain reaction, Bai Shui, Jenny Anna, and Zhang Dingtian all failed one after another, their faces pale as they stared at the stone in shock. The fist in front of Lu Yin's eyes grew closer and closer, until he saw the starry sky and endless darkness. It was as if he was looking at the river of time, and countless people had died to this fist. This fist had turned day into night. Lu Yin subconsciously channeled the serious art and gritted his teeth so hard that his lips bled. The fist gradually slowed down and he could see it clearly. Although the fist covered the starry sky and reversed day and night, it wasn't impossible to dodge. "Wait, why should I dodge?" Lu Yin's eyes went wide as 3 stars revolved around his body. Suddenly a 4th star appeared vaguely. He had been observing his star chart all this time, and the moment the fist pressed down on him, the 4th star barely managed to form a phantom image. The star then exploded and the fist in front of him disappeared right before it was about to hit him. Lu Yin himself seemed to have traversed an endless distance and arrived outside a long corridor. Endless darkness enveloped the entire area, and he couldn't see the distance. All he could see was an ancient corridor that reeked of blood. Lu Yin couldn't describe the corridor in front of him. There was no light source, but the entire corridor was clearly visible. He could clearly see it, but the next moment it changed. This was a corridor that could change. The entire corridor was dark red, and the stone walls on both sides were engraved with indecipherable murals. The figures on the murals didn't make a single sound, but Lu Yin felt as if they were howling and shouting. The walls seemed to be dripping with blood, and his nose was filled with the stench of blood. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 51. This was the only corridor in this endless space of darkness, and Lu Yin was stepping on its floor. Taking a step back allowed him to blend into the endless darkness. Lu Yin frowned and walked forward. There was a stone slab at the entrance of the corridor that merged with the rest of the corridor. Rows of names were engraved on it, and most of them ended with the word Day-Night. Day-Night was a surname that represented some sort of inheritance. Thinking back to the powerful clans in the universe that Xiao Luo had mentioned, Lu Yin knew that this stone was the Day-Night clan's inheritance. At the top of the slab was a name, Night King Jinwu. The moment he saw this name, Lu Yin's gaze seemed to pierce through the boundless space to see a domineering man standing in the heavens. However, he quickly sobered up and his eyes widened in shock. Just a name was enough to make him lose focus. Night King Zhenwu, Night King Day Night. Who was this person? Suppressing the shock in his heart, he shifted his gaze to the interior of the corridor. He lifted his foot and took another step forward, this time into the corridor. At the same time, in the depths of the universe, at the center of an ancient continent, there was a towering stone stele that seemed to pierce through the heavens. It emitted a terrifying aura that caused the stars to tremble. Two glowing stones slowly revolved around the middle of the stone stele. At the bottom, a few figures stood quietly. They were covered in dust, and if one didn't look closely, one would think that they were statues. The moment Lu Yin stepped into the corridor, his image appeared at the bottom of the stone stele. It was blurry and he couldn't see it clearly. Another new clansman has entered. I wonder how high he'll reach. Our clansmen are becoming more and more outrageous. Their talents are getting worse. Don't worry about that. No matter how bad his talent is, he's still a member of the Day-Night clan. Anyone from our clan can crush countless geniuses. Speaking of which, why hasn't the stolen ancient stone been recovered yet? It's too inefficient. Don't worry. No one in the universe would dare to steal our ancient stone. It'll be back soon, but the one who stole it must be severely punished. That clansman's talent is strange. It would be a pity to kill him. It doesn't matter. Since that child has appeared in this generation, the others aren't important. That child is the hope of our Day-Night clan. As they spoke, they unconsciously raised their heads. Their gazes crossed the distance and looked towards the top of the stone tablet. A human figure flickered with radiance. It was vivid and lifelike, as if it was real. It climbed to the top and overlooked all living beings. Suddenly, the image of Lu Yin at the bottom of the stone tablet disappeared. Everyone looked over and sighed in disappointment. Even his appearance can't be shown. How terrible. Has this generation's luck been taken over by that child? It's too cruel for other people. Not all of them. There were 2 kids who climbed up just now. It's not bad. Within the corridor, Lu Yin felt a boundless pressure the moment he took his first step. It wasn't a physical pressure, but rather a spiritual one. The loneliness of the night almost swallowed him whole. And the deeper he went, the more intense the feeling of desolation and despair became. 3 meters away, a fist appeared in the darkness, flashing with white light as it knocked him out of the corridor and into the darkness. He woke up in an instant, only to see the shocked gazes of Zhang Dingtian and the others. Why are you all looking at me like that? Lu Yin shook his head. Oh, liar. You were surrounded by an ancient aura. You definitely succeeded, Jenny Anna said in disbelief. She seemed to know something. I don't need to explain it to you, he replied. Jenny Anna was furious. She had accidentally found out from her father that the fugitive was a member of that terrifying clan and had even brought their inheritance stone with him. She had come to try her luck, and her father had not stopped her. Only those with the bloodline of that clan could successfully receive the stone. But what was going on now? Not only had someone succeeded, but 3 had appeared at once. She felt like her outlook on life had been challenged. Qingyu's identity was only known to the upper echelons, and most of the students had no idea what it meant even if they heard his full name. This was the tragedy of being in a fringe weave of the universe. Otherwise, Jenny Anna wouldn't have been the only one to come, but all the other students would have come to try their luck. One's outlook determined one's future. Munor was a melder and one of the strongest students in the trial, but so what? He wouldn't have known about the stone even if it had been placed right in front of him. Lu Yin scanned the crowd and found that Zhou Xian and Wu Xing had already left. Only Zhang Dingtian and Bai Shui were still there, but it was obvious that they had failed. The only ones left were the girl in green and Xiao Luo. The girl in green opened her eyes quickly and exhaled. She looked around at the crowd with a smug expression, but when she saw Xiao Luo still sitting there, her expression changed to one of displeasure. It was as if Xiao Luo had beaten her. Jenny Anna noticed her displeasure and said, "Don't think that you 2 are the only ones who succeeded. That kid succeeded as well." The girl in green was shocked and followed Jenny's gaze to Lu Yin. "You succeeded?" Lu Yin didn't answer. He didn't know what it meant to enter the inheritance, so he didn't want to talk about it. She looked at him strangely. "You're not from that clan, are you?" He continued to ignore her. The green-robed woman was displeased. She was about to say something when Xiao Luo opened his eyes. At the same time the stone fell to the ground with a thud. "Hey, what did you learn?" she asked Xiao Luo curiously. Xiao Luo smiled. "Nothing." "Impossible, you took longer than me." She couldn't believe it. Xiao Luo smiled and looked at Lu Yin. "How about you?" Lu Yin shook his head. "I didn't succeed." "Liar," she shouted, staring at him. "You succeeded as well, right? You must have learned something as well." Lu Yin looked at the girl in green, then at Xiao Luo and finally at Jenny Anna. Jenny Anna had a bad feeling. What are you trying to do?" His lips curled up. "I almost forgot about you. Surrender, and from now on you'll be part of the glorious negotiation team." "What negotiation team?" Jenny Anna was confused and didn't even have time to react before he grabbed her. She was about as strong as Roz, so he easily restrained her. "Bastard, let go of me. Do you know who I am?" "You bastard, I'm Jenny Anna, the heir of the Anna family. No one can save you if you capture me," she shouted, glaring angrily at him. Lu Yin sneered. "I don't care who you are as long as you're helpful to the negotiation. With Roz and you the chances of success are very high." Jenny Anna's screams were useless, so he tossed her to Bai Shui. "Watch her carefully, she's a bargaining chip." Bai Shui furrowed her beautiful eyebrows, thought for a moment, then nodded and pulled Jenny Anna out. Neither the woman nor Xiao Luo interfered, as they had only come for the stone. If possible, Lu Yin wanted to capture them as well, but he wasn't confident. Both of them were unfathomable, especially Xiao Luo. He looked ordinary, but Lu Yin would never forget the sense of danger he'd given off the first time they'd met. "Brother Lu, let me give you a word of advice. It's best if you throw this stone away, or it'll bring you an unimaginable disaster," Xiao Luo said to Lu Yin before he left, not waiting for a reply. The woman in green quickly chased after him, wanting to know what Xiao Luo had obtained from the inheritance stone. Lu Yin's eyes narrowed. Xiao Luo's words were exactly what he'd been thinking. This stone was very precious, but it was also the source of disaster. Keeping it would definitely attract an unimaginably powerful enemy, and it wasn't something he could control at the moment. Even the Great Yu Empire wouldn't dare touch it, let alone himself. Lu Yin's scalp went numb when he thought of the day-night names on the stone slab. This was definitely a terrifying clan. Lu Yin knew that he wasn't a genius with heaven-defying luck, so there was no way he'd be able to keep the stone in the face of such a powerful clan. He secretly decided to throw it away, but it was a technical job. Outside the capital, a dozen students suddenly banded together to charge into the city. They were all here for Jenny Anna, as the Anna family was much stronger than the Roz family. Jenny Anna hadn't come out for a long time, and these students couldn't wait any longer. Zhou Xian immediately ordered someone to sound the alarm. Lu Yin and Zhang Dingtian were in the basement of the Technology Institute, while Jerlin, Ballerer and Geraldine were resting. Zhou Xian was the only one who couldn't even resist against a dozen students. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 52. Suddenly, a green figure streaked across the sky, bypassing Zhou Xian and charging into the group of students. She punched them one by one, knocking them all unconscious in less than 10 seconds. This scene was quite shocking, especially for Zhou Xian. He was part of the second batch of trial students, and all of them had the strength of the strongest students in their respective academies. Yet he couldn't even resist against that green-clothed girl. How was this possible? Moreover, that green-clothed girl's speed was too fast. Lu Yin and the rest had just taken to the skies when they saw this scene. They were just as shocked. She definitely hadn't been this fast when they'd first snatched the stone, or Lu Yin wouldn't have been able to stop her. Now that she was so fast, she must have obtained some sort of inheritance from the stone. Outside the capital, the girl in green frowned. So this is the white flash? It's still a bit slow. It's best to use it during the day, let's try it out tomorrow. More than 10 students were immediately captured by cultivators and brought into the city, including Jenny Anna. At this point there were 42 students in the capital. Lu Yin didn't hold back as he plundered them. He'd already had 20 star crystals from the group of people he'd captured, but Jenny Anna alone had contributed close to 15, which was even more than Roz. She was the one who'd given him the most star crystals out of all the students he'd captured. With the addition of the dozen or so others, Lu Yin now had 42 star crystals, which was exactly the same as the number of people he'd captured. This was a considerable amount of wealth. As the heir of the Anna family, Jenny Anna only had 15 star crystals, but Lu Yin had 3 times that amount in his possession. Robbery was the best way to earn money. Lu Yin was excited to be able to roll his die again. After greeting Zhang Dingtian, Lu Yin went into seclusion. He had no choice but to use star crystals, or he wouldn't have enough space in his cosmic ring. He buried fire crystals all around him and raised his hand to summon the die. It wasn't completely dull but had actually recovered a bit. Lu Yin didn't want to wait for it to recover, so he crushed a cube of star crystal. The die immediately absorbed the energy and its surface quickly recovered, shrouding it in hazy starlight. Every time this happened, Lu Yin would feel both excited and nervous. He would slowly reach out with his finger and tap the die as if he was on a pilgrimage. The die spun rapidly until it finally appeared in front of Lu Yin. It was another pip. Lu Yin looked forward to what he'd get. Soon enough, a fist-sized star crystal fell from the void and landed on the ground with a thud. Lu Yin was speechless. A cube of star crystals had been exchanged for 1,000 times more than what he'd gotten. Gambling really was a death trap. Thinking about it, Lu Yin regained his composure. It didn't matter, he had more money. He crushed another cube of star crystal and the die returned to its original state. He tapped the die. Lu Yin was speechless. His luck was bad, the chance of getting something good. Sure enough, he got it this time. Lu Yin's eyes widened. Is this toilet paper? Lu Yin was furious. Who would put toilet paper in their cosmic ring? Who would be such a beast? Lu Yin was enraged and he wanted to jump through the black hole and beat up that bastard. Who would put toilet paper in their cosmic ring? It took him a while to calm down. No matter how much money he had, this wasn't the right way to spend it. 2 cubes of star crystals had been exchanged for a fist-sized crystal and a roll of toilet paper. If Geraldine found out, she would cry her eyes out. Her entire fortune was only worth a few dozen star crystals, and he'd lost 2,000 times over. The so-called talent borrowing was that after rolling 5 points he could borrow the talent of the person he touched into the die for him to use. After using it once it would disappear. The condition was that he had to touch the talent cultivator he wanted to borrow within 10 seconds. Otherwise, after 10 seconds the function would disappear. Lu Yin looked at the time and saw that 2 seconds had passed. He rushed out of the room. There was only one cultivator with innate gifts in the capital, and that was Bai Shui. Without hesitation he rushed towards the ruins of the capital's steel walls where she was. His body swayed in midair. 5 rolls had drained his mental strength to the limit and he needed to rest. Bai Shui was still 100 meters away. When there was only 1 second left, he placed a hand on her shoulder and exhaled heavily. Geraldine, Jerlin, Ballerer and Zhou Xian all stared blankly at the scene. What was going on? Bai Shui was stunned as well, staring at Lu Yin. Lu Yin's hand was still on her shoulder, but he quickly withdrew it when he saw the strange gazes around him. Sorry, I mistook you for someone else. He then left. The ruins were silent. No one had reacted yet. Geraldine was speechless. That was a terrible excuse. Why had that bastard suddenly reached out? Was he trying to take advantage of her? It was broad daylight and there was no warning at all. Was he crazy? Geraldine wasn't the only one who thought so. The others felt the same way, especially Jerlin. Was he going to confess? Did we disturb him? Probably, Ballerer answered seriously. Bai Shui's face flushed red, her beautiful face mesmerizing even Geraldine. She was so beautiful that even the stars paled in comparison. Back in the capital, Lu Yin slammed into his room with a thump and fell asleep. He had reached his limit. Not long after he fell asleep, rumors began to spread throughout the capital. Did you hear? The hidden sage confessed to the Luo Sheng but was rejected. He got so drunk he doesn't even dare to show his face. That can't be right. I heard that the hidden sage didn't even dare to confess. He was so infatuated with the Luo Sheng that he slipped away without saying a word. You're all wrong. My cousin's uncle's younger brother's neighbor saw the hidden sage kiss the Luo Sheng and proposed to her. He even bought her a wedding ring. Get lost. Where are you going to buy a ring at this time? That afternoon Zhang Dingtian found Bai Shui. I heard. That's not true. He mistook you for someone else. Bai Shui immediately barked, knowing what he was about to say. Zhang Dingtian was stunned. That's good. He then left. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 53. Bai Shui was furious. That bastard was definitely out for revenge. She had stopped him from looking at what Qingyu had left behind, but he'd waited until now to take revenge. What a bastard. She wanted to reason with him, but it was harder to explain herself. Who knew what rumors would spread? Bai Shui had no choice but to endure it. The next afternoon, a figure descended upon the capital, causing the air to distort as an enormous amount of star energy swept across the sky. Zhang Dingtian and the rest immediately rushed out and looked up. It was Yan Gang. Hand over what Qingyu left behind in the capital immediately, he barked, looking down at the crowd. Zhang Dingun gripped his sword and soared into the sky. Who are you? Yan Gang from Fire's Melt Planet, he replied arrogantly, looking at Zhang Dingtian with disdain. Fire's Melt Planet? Zhurlin exclaimed from below. Bai Shui was puzzled. What about it? Zhurlin answered solemnly. Fire's Melt Planet is one of the largest powers in the Frostwave Weave, on par with the Great Yu Empire. The planet was burned by flames and the people there are all very strong. Their fire techniques are unparalleled. Geraldine spoke up. Normal fire techniques are useless against them. Their skin has long since mutated from years of being burned. Anyone from Fire's Melt Planet who can appear in the Great Yu Empire is at least a melder. This Yan Gang must be one as well, and he's definitely stronger than Munoer. Bai Shui looked up at Zhang Dingtian with worry. Each enemy was stronger than the last. If you want something, tell Qingyu to come get it himself, said Zhang Dingtian solemnly. This saber was Qingyu's. His saber had been destroyed by Munoer, so this saber was his weapon. Yan Gang sneered. How dare an ant like you talk to me? He then waved his hand, causing a scorching wave of star energy to blast towards Zhang Dingtian. Zhang Dingtian's eyes widened and he used the roving step to rush towards Yan Gang. He slashed out with his blade, the blade vibrating rapidly as it fused with the transformations of his shockwave palm. This was the attack that had injured Munoer. Zhang Dingtian's attack was very powerful. He was already a realm breaker and his attack was infused with battle techniques. Even Yan Gang was shocked. Yan Gang clashed his hands together, and flames suddenly surged out and turned into a spear that pierced towards Zhang Dingtian. The saber and the spear collided, and the flames fell like meteors in the capital, causing panic and burning the earth. The air in the sky was pushed away and the airwaves spread in all directions. With a loud bang, Zhang Dingtian was no match for Yan Gang. He was swept away by the spear and smashed into the ground. High up in the sky, Yan Gang looked at Zhang Dingtian in amazement. Not many sentinels can survive my spear. Not bad, you can follow me. Bai Shui, Zhou Xian and the rest looked at Yan Gang angrily. These trial students always acted high and mighty towards the people of Earth. Asking them to follow them was like giving alms. This was a blatant case of the strong preying on the weak. Geraldine was shocked. Fire innate talent? Zhurlin replied in a low voice. No, the Fire's Melt Planet's skin has mutated and can produce flames through high temperatures. It's actually an unconventional innate gift. This person is really strong. Lu Yin was still in a deep slumber and everyone was powerless against Yan Gang. Yan Gang was cold and arrogant as he pointed his flaming spear downwards. I'll say it one more time. Hand it over or I'll burn you to ashes. Zhang Dingtian coughed up blood. Give him the stone. Everyone felt sorrowful. Zhurlin raised her eyebrows. Stone? What stone? At that moment, a green figure soared into the sky from afar and disappeared in a flash, reappearing behind Yan Gang. Not bad, let me try the white flash. What? Yan Gang's eyes narrowed, unable to react in time. Bang. Everyone stared at the crater in the ground outside the capital in shock. The arrogant Yan Gang had been beaten to the ground like a dead dog. High up in the sky, the girl in green clenched her fists in excitement and muttered something to herself. Yan Gang roared furiously, his eyes bloodshot as he stared at the sky. Slut, I'm going to kill you. He suddenly charged forward, flames covering his body as it transformed into armor to protect him. His flaming spear pierced through the air towards the green-robed woman. The green-robed woman was excited. Good. She didn't do anything, but her body suddenly disappeared. Yan Gang spat out a mouthful of blood as his entire body was struck by an invisible attack. His waist was bent over and his body was once again smashed into the ground. The girl in green reappeared, looking down proudly. Everyone was shocked. The difference was too great. This time it wasn't just the bystanders who saw it. Even Yan Gang himself felt the difference. He climbed out of the crater and stared at the girl in green in shock. "Who are you?" The girl in green raised her head. "Lulu Mavis." Yan Gang, Geraldine and the rest were shocked at the name. "Mavis? That Mavis?" Yan Gang exclaimed. Lulu's lips curled up. "Is there a second Mavis in the universe?" Zhang Dingtian, Bai Shui and the rest were puzzled. What did she mean? The flames around Yan Gang dissipated as he stared deeply at Mavis, his tone much more respectful. "Is this your territory?" Lulu didn't answer, instead beckoning Yan Gang with her finger. "Continue, I still want to test the power of the white flash." Yan Gang smiled bitterly. "I'm not here to fight. The heir of the Hua family, Hua Shaoling, has been captured by Qingyu. He has a condition. You must return the things he left behind in the capital." Lulu frowned. "What does that have to do with me? You're not going to fight?" Yan Gang stood there calmly, not wanting to fight at all. His attitude was completely different from before. Lulu was bored and pursed her lips before charging into the city. Seeing Lulu Mavis leave, Yan Gang soared into the air. His tone immediately turned cold. "Did you hear what I just said? Who's in charge? Tell him to come out and talk to me." Zhou Xian immediately headed to the city to look for Lu Yin. The stone belonged to the capital, so the decision should have been made by Zhang Dingtian. However, Lu Yin had obviously obtained some sort of inheritance, so he couldn't just give it to someone else. He had to discuss it with Lu Yin first. Although he didn't want to admit it, Lu Yin was now the greatest protector in the capital. "Geraldine, what's the Mavis Bank?" Bai Shui suddenly asked. Geraldine and Gerlin glanced at each other and said solemnly, "The universe is boundless and has given birth to countless empires and powers. These powers all have their own laws of exchange and currency, and the only bank that can issue the universal currency is the Mavis Bank. The Mavis Bank has branches all over the universe and issued the same currency. It is an incomparably large and ancient economic overlord. Needless to say, just the fact that they were the only universal currency in the universe was enough to let people know what the Mavis Bank was. Compared to the entire universe, Earth was just a tiny planet. Even so, there were still many banks on Earth, and there was no such thing as the only universal currency on Earth. However, the Mavis Bank was actually able to issue universal currency across the entire universe. It was no wonder that even the arrogant Yan Gang didn't dare to act impudently. If that woman really was from the bank, her background far surpassed Hua Shaoling, Roz and Jenny Anna. Within the capital, Lu Yin was lying on the ground with his eyes closed and his brows furrowed. His body was drenched in sweat and his fists were clenched tightly. In his dream, he saw a snow-white finger shattering the void and traversing time to descend. It spread across countless stars and got closer and closer. Lu Yin suddenly roared, "How dare you!" He stood up abruptly and panted heavily. His eyes were unfocused and it took a while for him to calm down. He shook his head vigorously with a confused look in his eyes. Zhou Xian arrived at this time. "What's wrong, Lu Yin?" Lu Yin crawled up from the ground, exhausted. "Nothing, why are you here?" Zhou Xian looked at him suspiciously as if he'd just been fished out of water. "Are you really all right?" Lu Yin shook his head. "I'm fine. Someone called Yan Gang wants to take the stone away on behalf of Qingyu," Zhou Xian said. Lu Yin's eyes flashed and he nodded. "Let's go meet him." Zhou Xian nodded. "Do you want to change your clothes?" "I'll change when I get back," Lu Yin replied and flew out of the city. Along the way, Zhou Xian told him about how Lulu had defeated Yan Gang. Lu Yin was shocked when he heard Lulu's name. If he remembered correctly, there was only one surname in the entire universe: the Mavis Bank. The Mavis Bank wasn't an ordinary bank. He'd wanted to open an account there, but he hadn't been able to. Even ordinary rich families weren't qualified to do so, as the Mavis Bank was the only bank that could exchange universal currency. If it really was the Mavis Bank, then that woman's background was terrifying. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 54. Lu Yin soon arrived. Yan Gang was already impatient, and without Lulu around he was once again arrogant. Lu Yin saw him but ignored him. Instead he glanced at Bai Shui, remembering that he had done something before he fell asleep. Bai Shui's expression was ugly, both because of Yan Gang and Lu Yin. The rumors in the city were growing and she couldn't stop them. "Where's Lulu?" Lu Yin asked Geraldine. "She returned to the city," she replied. Lu Yin nodded and looked at Zhang Dingan. "Are you injured?" "This person is very strong, he's from the Fire's Melt planet." Lu Yin raised a brow. The Fire's Melt planet? He had never heard of it. He had rushed straight to Earth after arriving in Frostwave Weave, so he didn't know much about the weave. Not far away, Yan Gang's gaze turned cold. "Who's in charge? Come out and talk." Lu Yin turned back to look at him. "What do you want?" Yan Gang laughed in anger. "Are you ignoring me?" Lu Yin's lips curled up. "So what if I am?" Yan Gang's eyes went wide, his body temperature rising and distorting the air around him. However, he seemed to have thought of something and scanned the city fearfully. "Cut the crap and give me Qingyu's item." "Why should I?" Lu Yin retorted, his tone unfriendly. Many people who had just woken up were in this state. Yan Gang's eyes flashed with murderous intent. "Impudent, do you know who I am?" "I don't, and I don't need to know," Lu Yin replied. Yan Gang was furious. If not for Lulu he would have attacked already. A mere native wouldn't be able to stop him. "State your conditions, I must take Qingyu's item." Lu Yin had never planned on keeping the stone, even if Xia Luo hadn't warned him. The stone's origins were too great and it wasn't something he could possess. Even if he had to give it away, he would still need to obtain sufficient benefits. "Are you representing Qingyu or the trial students?" "Qingyu," Yan Gang replied coldly. Lu Yin replied, "I can give him the item, but he must hand over all the students he captured." Everyone was shocked, not expecting Lu Yin to raise such a condition. Recalling that he had once mentioned using the students to negotiate with the Great Yu Empire, Zhang Dingtian and the rest grew resolute. In reality, Lu Yin only cared about the students' star crystals, and the negotiations were only secondary. Yan Gang frowned. "What do you want students for? By the way, you seem to have captured quite a few students as well. Is Jenny Ona among them?" Now that many students had removed their gadgets, the information naturally couldn't appear on the network. Lu Yin's gadget didn't have a name, so some battle reports couldn't be published. "There seems to be such a person," Lu Yin replied. "Let her go." Yan Gang shouted. Lu Yin sneered. "Who do you think you are?" Yan Gang's eyes widened in anger. "How dare you?" He slammed his palms together, creating flames as he leapt towards Lu Yin. The Fire's Melt planet had a fiery temper to begin with, and it was already quite good that they had been able to suppress it for so long. Now Lu Yin's words had caused them to erupt once more. Everyone was on high alert. Lu Yin clenched his right fist tightly, causing the light around it to distort as he punched out from the ground. Yan Gang, who was charging towards Lu Yin, was shocked. It was clearly daytime, but this punch made Yan Gang see the darkness of the night as if day and night had changed. His body felt an indescribable pain as if he was experiencing some sort of contradiction. He growled and transformed his flame spear into a spear that stabbed out. The shockwave crushed the ground and with a loud bang Yan Gang was sent flying backwards. The spear was destroyed and he was forced to take a few more steps back in the air. Lu Yin took a step back as well, staring at Yan Gang solemnly. This person was indeed strong, even stronger than Munor. He was definitely a melder whose cultivation had been sealed. The Day-Night Fist was an inherited battle technique of the Day-Night clan, and its power surpassed even the 3-star Sirius Palm and the 7th form of the Sky Beast Claw. Yet it had been blocked by this person without any injuries. This person's power couldn't be underestimated. Lu Yin was surprised, but Yan Gang was even more shocked. A mere sentinel had made him feel a sense of danger, and he had even used his full strength at the last moment. If this person's attack had been just a little stronger, he wasn't sure if he would have been able to break the seal. Zhang Dingtian's eyes narrowed. He had fought Yan Gang before and knew how terrifying he was, but Lu Yin had actually been able to force him back. This person's strength was far too different from when they had first met. Lu Yin's strength earned Yan Gang's respect, and he descended a little before looking at Lu Yin solemnly. Jenny Anna is a descendant of the Anna family of the Great Yu Empire. Capturing her will bring you a lot of trouble. This planet belongs to the Great Yu Empire, and the Anna family has 10,000 ways to exterminate the humans here. Think carefully. Lu Yin calmly replied, I understand, no need to say more. If you want something, tell Qingyu to hand over the captured students, or there's nothing to discuss. Yan Gang nodded helplessly, all right, I'll contact Qingyu. He then activated his gadget. Just as Yan Gang was about to contact Qingyu, Lulu Mavis suddenly appeared, startling everyone. I knew you'd obtained an inheritance. That punch wasn't bad, let's spar, she said excitedly as she stared at Lu Yin. Lu Yin smiled faintly, I refuse. Lulu Mavis blinked. Refuse? Why? Powerhouses should learn from each other more often to improve. I'm not a powerhouse, Lu Yin said calmly. She shook her head. You're not bad among the sentinels, you're qualified to spar with me. Don't talk nonsense, come on. Zhou Xian and the rest had strange looks on their faces as they watched a beautiful girl tell a man to come on. This girl was clearly stupid. Lu Yin's head hurt. He really didn't want to fight this girl. She was too strong and a single punch from her would be unpleasant. Coupled with the speed she'd obtained from the stone, he was sure that he would only be able to passively take a beating if they sparred. It would be difficult to catch her and he didn't want to look for trouble. Hey, are you still a man? Come on, come on. Lulu shouted. Lu Yin remained indifferent as he looked at Yan Gang. Lulu grew anxious, but there was nothing she could do if Lu Yin didn't move. She couldn't sneak up on him, could she? She was a lady and she wouldn't sneak up on good people, only bad people. Lu Yin suddenly thought of the art of Sirius. If he could learn the 7 forms of the Sky Beast Claw from Sirius, then could he learn her speed from her movements? It seemed possible and his eyes flashed. Should he spar with her? Suddenly, Bai Shui cried out and everyone looked over to see her talking to someone on her gadget. Not long after, she looked up with an ugly expression. The blue camp has been destroyed. Zhang Dingtian's gaze turned cold. Who did it? Lu Yin looked at her as well. The blue camp in the northeast was a power founded by the Luo Sheng, and he remembered that Zhao Yu had been one of the 3 snow maidens. Bai Shui spoke in a low voice. It wasn't destroyed by a human but by a mutant beast. A huge flying turtle. A turtle? Everyone was shocked, their gazes strange. Bai Shui nodded. According to the blue camp's gadget, the turtle's power level was over 10,000, but we couldn't determine its exact power level. Everyone was shocked. Over 10,000? That was the power level of an explorer. The Sentinel realm had a power level of 3,000, and above that was the Melder realm with a power level of 6,000. Above that was the Lemiter realm with a power level of 10,000. Anyone with a power level of 10,000 was called an explorer, meaning that they were powerhouses who could explore the universe. Such powerhouses could roam the stars and not be bound by the universe. Qingyu was an explorer with a power level of 10,000, or else he wouldn't have been able to survive on Neptune. How could there be a mutant beast on Earth with a power level of 10,000? Yan Gang seemed to be talking to Qingyu as he shouted, Qingyu's already. But before he could finish, a terrifying pressure came from the east and engulfed the world. Yan Gang was blasted to the ground by the pressure, but he was unable to speak as he swallowed a mouthful of dust. The sky in the east was now obscured. Lu Yin and the rest looked to the east in shock as a gigantic turtle that was larger than the entire capital appeared in front of them. This scene stunned the millions of survivors. How could there be such a huge turtle in the world? It also emitted an aura that terrified everyone. It was a powerhouse with a power level of 10,000, a power level that could explore the universe. Yan Gang was about to stand up and curse, but he froze the moment he looked up. Where did this crazy turtle come from? The turtle was very fast, its huge shadow covering the entire capital for a second before it disappeared towards the west. Its huge eyes didn't even look down. To it, Lu Yin and the rest were nothing more than ants that could be easily crushed. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 55. On a huge spaceship outside Earth, Sigmund and the others stared intently at the screen, which showed the turtle's image. General Sigmund, a creature with a power level over 10,000, can't be considered a trial anymore. Capture it, Tori said urgently. Jenny Anna was still in the capital, and if this creature attacked the capital, everyone would die. Sigmund clenched his fists and looked at Mira. Myra's expression was calm as she smiled. Is death really that frightening to the young elites of the Great Yu Empire? Tori's expression changed, but he didn't say anything. The giant turtle quickly disappeared. From the beginning to the end, no one said a word. No one dared to attract the attention of the giant turtle. It was too terrifying. It didn't even need to attack. Just its body alone was enough to crush everyone. Lu Yin sighed. Wait, where's Lulu? He looked to the west again and saw a green figure quickly leave. That crazy woman couldn't have gone after the turtle, could she? Outside the capital city, Yan Gang was coughing. He had choked on the dust and only managed to recover after much difficulty. Everyone was still immersed in the terror of the turtle when Yan Gang spoke up. Qingyu agreed he can trade with you. Tell me who's Qingyu in the network, Lu Yin said. Yan Gang told him. Lu Yin immediately contacted Qingyu. You're Qingyu, he asked. In Northern Europe, Qingyu looked at his gadget and smiled. You're the native who oversaw the capital and captured a few dozen students? Your item is in my hands. If you want to trade, give me the students you captured. That kid just talked to me. Sure, do you want Hu Shaoling? I can give her to you if you want, Qingyu teased. Lu Yin's eyes narrowed. He knew that Yan Gang was running errands for Qingyu because of Hu Shaoling. He already had Roz and Jenny Anna, so there was no need for Hu Shaoling. Otherwise, Yan Gang would go all out. Hu Shaoling doesn't matter, but you have too few students. Qingyu's eyes flashed. Kid, I'm only trading because I don't want to run errands. Do you think you can stop me with just the few of you? Of course not. You still have the strength of a melder, but if you can escape, so can we. We'll take that stone and hide. Once we fail the trial mission, the Great Yu Empire will personally come to capture you. Can you stop them? I know that you want to use that stone to escape. Compared to your own life, my conditions are much better, Lu Yin said. Qingyu chuckled. Very smart. That's right. I want to use that rock to escape. Alright, I can capture some more students. I have a batch here. There are 32 in total. Is that okay? Sure. 10 days from now, at the foot of the Tibetan peak in India, Qingyu said. Lu Yin agreed and hung up the gadget. 10 days later, Yan Gang stared at Lu Yin. You can go to Northern Europe to pick up Hu Shaoling. Yan Gang's eyes lit up. You better hand Jenny Anna over to me. You don't know how powerful the Anna family is. Impossible, you can leave now, Lu Yin said impatiently. A cold glint flashed in Yan Gang's eyes as he left without saying anything. Once Yan Gang left, Lu Yin explained the situation to the rest. Zhang Dingtian spoke up. I'll go with you. Qingyu is the main culprit behind Earth's evolution. Because of him, countless people have died. I want him to pay with his life. I'll go too, Bai Shui said resolutely. Lu Yin looked at Geraldine. Spread the news that Qingyu will appear at the foot of the Tibetan peak in 10 days. You want to use the students to get rid of Qingyu? Zherlin asked. Lu Yin nodded. Isn't that your mission? Get rid of him and complete the trial mission. It'll be good for you. What about you? Do you want to take revenge for the people of this planet too? Zherlin asked. Lu Yin took a deep breath. The trial isn't just for the students, it's also for us. You have results and so do I. Completing the mission will increase our bargaining chips with the Great Yu Empire. Zherlin sneered. You really want to negotiate with the Great Yu Empire? You're crazy, you won't succeed. I'll try, Lu Yin shrugged nonchalantly. It didn't take long for the network to explode as Qingyu went crazy and captured more students, forcing most of the students who had been monitoring him in Northern Europe to flee. At the same time, news of Qingyu's appearance at the foot of the Tibetan peak spread like wildfire. Many students were shaken and rushed to India. Whether the news was true or not, they wouldn't lose anything if they had to travel a bit longer. Qingyu's whereabouts were completely exposed and many students rushed to India. This would be the final battle of the trial, and either the students would complete the mission or fail it. The Great Yu Empire would take action. Lu Yin went into seclusion once more, studying the movements of the stars with his star chart in hand. He hoped to activate the fourth star. The Sirius palm was terrifying, and its power doubled with each additional star. 3 stars could suppress Eddie and rival Miras, while 4 stars would be enough to suppress Munoer and Yan Gang. The Sky Beast Claw and Day-Night Punch couldn't be strengthened for the time being, so the only way to increase their power was to use the Serious Palm. But before that, Lu Yin found a piece of paper and closed his eyes, recalling the scene from his dream. He had dreamt that he had been crushed by a jade finger that had traversed the heavens. It had felt very real, like he had been crushed. His heart had been filled with boundless rage, but the memory was still fresh in his mind. He raised his brush to draw it but couldn't bring himself to do it. The jade finger that had pierced through the heavens was clear, but he just couldn't draw it. He tossed the paper away in frustration, feeling like he should be able to draw it, but he just couldn't. After thinking about it for a while, he sighed. Forget it, it was just a dream. He raised his hand and his die appeared, the side with a cold 5 on it. This was Bai Shui's innate gift that he could borrow, but it would disappear after use. The next time he wanted to use it, he would have to draw 5 pips and touch her within 10 seconds. Interesting innate gift, he muttered to himself, taking out a cube of star crystals from his cosmic ring and crushing it for the die to absorb, but it didn't do so this time. Am I at my limit? Looks like I'll have to wait for a while, Lu Yin muttered to himself, dispelling the die with a wave of his hand and beginning to observe the star chart. This trial had been a nightmare for many students. The first batch had been fine, as most of the strongest students had been captured. Most of the ordinary students had only wanted to occupy a place and get decent results, but the second batch had been unlucky. Almost half of them had been captured regardless of whether they were from the capital or Northern Europe. This had never happened before in the history of the Great Yu Empire's trials. Sigmund and the rest had lost face. More importantly, even disciples of large families like Roz and Jenny Anna had been captured, and there were even experts from Yu Academy among them. Sigmund and the rest couldn't even raise their heads. Mira watched with great interest, occasionally praising the trials, but to Sigmund and the rest, it sounded like sarcasm. This is a true trial. There are many trials where the students crush the natives. That's not a trial, it's more like a stage drama. General Mando, your great Yu Empire is truly an iron-blooded empire, Mira praised. Sigmund was speechless. This woman had just said that the great Yu Empire's youths were afraid of death, and now she was saying the opposite. General, we should prepare. The final battle is in 10 days and Qingyu gave us 10 days to gather the students. It seems like he's very confident, Tori Anna said. That Lu Yin doesn't understand how terrifying Qingyu is as a melder. There's a 90% chance he'll fail, Shalosh said coldly. Sigmund stared at the screen. Lu Yin's actions were akin to asking a tiger for its skin. Trying to make a deal with Qingyu was akin to courting death. Even if Qingyu was only a sentinel, the Day-Night clan's power was not something ordinary elites could match, let alone a melder. Mira looked at the screen with a faint smile. A melder? No, that was wrong. She was certain that Qingyu wasn't a melder, and it would be difficult for him to even display the power of a peak sentinel. His injuries were too severe and he could barely display half of a sentinel's power. Even so, he looked no different from a melder. This was the Day-Night clan. 2 days later, Yan Gang found Qingyu and wanted to take Hu Shaoling away, but Qingyu refused. You got what's mine? Qingyu mocked. Yan Gang was furious. You'll be able to trade with the natives in 8 days. Let Hu Shaoling go first. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 56. Qingyu sneered. The condition was for you to exchange something of mine for Hu Shaoling. Since you didn't bring the item, what right do you have to make me release her? Scram. Yan Gang was furious, but he knew he wasn't Qingyu's match. Qingyu's gaze grew colder and colder, so he quickly left, afraid that he would be captured. Hu Shaoling sat on the snowy ground, her eyes flickering as she watched Qingyu's back. If this person was really from the Day-Night clan, then none of the trial students would be a match for him. The trade in 8 days was all under his control and he was just playing around. Below Tianju's hidden peak, students appeared one after another, almost all of them from the second batch. Most of them had removed their gadgets to avoid having their locations announced. Munoer had also appeared, but he had hidden himself. There was one other melder whose cultivation had been sealed, and he had hidden himself as well. Those who dared to appear here were the true elites. 8 days passed in a flash. and Lu Yin spent the entire time observing the star chart and the rotation of the stars. The fourth star was becoming clearer, but it still hadn't fully appeared. He sighed. The further he progressed, the more difficult it would be to simulate the stars. He could feel that adding more stars wasn't that simple. The serious art was more like creating a system of stars that mimicked the universe. It was a magnificent technique, but just 4 stars was already so difficult. His current serious art could only simulate 8 stars at most, and he didn't know how long it would take him to complete it. As for breaking through to the Melder realm, that was unlikely in the near future. Breaking through to the Melder realm wasn't something that could be done by simply reshaping one's body. Everyone had different physiques, and the difficulty of breaking through was different as well. It required a certain feeling, a signal sent by the body to the body. Only by obtaining that feeling could one break through, or else reshaping would fail, and Lu Yin didn't want to experience the consequences of that. If breaking through to the Melder realm was so easy, then someone like Roz who didn't lack star crystals would have broken through long ago. Everything the human body grasped would have an impact on breaking through to the Melder realm, including techniques. Lu Yin looked at his palm, not knowing how the serious art would affect his breakthrough. He flipped his hand over to reveal his die, and he crushed another cube of star crystals. The die began to absorb the energy at a crazy rate and quickly returned to normal. Lu Yin was overjoyed when he saw that the die had been restored. After calculating the time, he would reach his limit after using it 5 times and would fall into a deep sleep. The die would also sleep for 10 days, which meant that he could only use it 4 times at a time. It was best to rest for a few days after using it. He really wanted to use it now since he had quite a few star crystals in his cosmic ring, but it was time for him to head to India. Walking out of his bedroom, he took to the skies. Zhang Dingtian and the rest were already waiting for him. There were 5 of them in total. Zhang Dingtian, Bai Shui, Geraldine, Zhurlin and Bauer. Including him, that made 6. Zhou Xian and Wuxia were left to guard the capital. A group of students were tied up behind Zhang Dingtian and the rest. Their faces were sallow and emaciated, and it was obvious that they had been starved to death. Although they were powerless, they still glared angrily at Lu Yin, especially Roz and Jenny Anna. One was the son of the vice-treasurer, while the other was the heir of the Anna family. They had never experienced such hardship before. At Varen's level, he was already an ordinary student. "Let's go," Zhang Dingtian said in a low voice. He soared into the air, and with a rope in his hand he dragged the 42 students as if they were broken wine bottles and flew towards the west. They had all left. These students couldn't stay here. Otherwise, even Zhou Xian and Wu Xing wouldn't be able to protect them. Lu Yin was stunned by the spectacular scene, and he wondered what the other students would think of it. Geraldine was stunned. She was just one of the most ordinary students in the trial, and any one of these captured students could kill her in an instant. Her worldview was being challenged. Zhurlin, on the other hand, was very excited. She provoked Eddie, Roz, and the rest while provoking Jenny Anna, angering the latter so much that she wanted to bite her. Lu Yin greeted Bai Shui, but she didn't look at him kindly. Lu Yin knew why. He'd heard the rumors in the city, and it was normal for her to be angry. Even he was a little angry. What did she mean by rejected? Was he really that bad? On the other hand, countless Indian survivors stared blankly at the sky above India. Qingyu used a rope to tie up all the captured students and drag them down the Tibetan peak. It was exactly the same as what Zhang Dingtian had done. Many of the students were so angry that they vomited blood. They were elites, but now they had lost all face. Hu Xiaoling's face was red with anger. She didn't just hate Qingyu, she hated Lu Yin as well. Using them in exchange? Bastard. If it wasn't for the trial, she really wanted to break the seal and fight Qingyu to the death. Outside of Earth, Sigmund and the others had ugly expressions on their faces. Mira, on the other hand, was smiling happily as she looked at the screen. Finally, the screen switched to Tianju's Tibetan peak. That was where the final battle would take place. No one thought that this would be an ordinary transaction. Battle was unavoidable. Qingyu had set out a day earlier, and when he arrived at Mount Tibet, Lu Yin and the rest weren't there yet. However, the students who had been waiting there feasted their eyes on them. The elite students who had always been high and mighty were being humiliated like this, and Hu Xiaoling was one of them. Yan Gang was trembling with rage. Hu Xiaoling was the fiancée of the Fireforge planet's young master, and this wasn't just a slap to her face, but to the young master himself. Qingyu casually tossed the students to the ground and yawned as he looked at the towering Mount Tibet. His expression was relaxed and he didn't look like a wanted criminal at all. Half a day later, Lu Yin and the rest arrived. The moment they saw Lu Yin's group, the hidden students were shocked once more. Lu Yin had captured even more students than Qingyu, and the sight of him being hung in the air was a spectacular sight. Even Yan Gang was stunned, but it was quickly followed by anger. The Fireforge planet had a good relationship with the Ona family, and he had been received by them when he had come to the Great Yu Empire. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 57. Lu Yin's heart skipped a beat when Qingyu's staff smashed down. It felt familiar, similar to the day-night fist. He didn't think too much about it and clawed out with the seventh form of the sky beast claw. Zhurlin shot out an arrow. Ballerer, Bai Shui and Geraldine all joined forces to block Qingyu's attack. Everyone was pushed back with a loud bang. Bai Shui, Geraldine, Zhurlin, and Ballerer all spat out mouthfuls of blood. Qingyu's attack had been too powerful, and they had barely been able to withstand it. Zhang Dingtian was also pushed back a dozen steps, each step leaving a clear footprint on the ground. Only Lu Yin was able to withstand Qingyu's attack with his hind legs, enduring unimaginable pressure. The staff disappeared, leaving Qingyu standing 10 meters away in astonishment. "You're not bad. Although I only retain my sentinel strength, you were able to block my attack." "Sentinel?" Hu Shaoling and a few other students exclaimed, even Yan Gang and the rest who were hiding in the shadows. "Wasn't he a melder?" Qingyu laughed. "Idiots believing everything others say. If you're really a melder, what's the point of this trial? Do you think the Great Yu Empire would send you to your deaths? A sentinel student naturally corresponds to a sentinel trial. You can only blame yourselves for being too stupid and weak." Yan Gang roared and charged out from the shadows, striking out with his palms to form a spear that pierced towards Qingyu. Zhurlin shouted, "The fugitive is here, capture him and the trial mission will be over. Our performance will be noticed by the Youth Council and Astral 10. Everyone." Zhurlin's words immediately had an effect. Every student who dared to come here was here to complete their mission for Astral 10, and no one would give up. This was especially true when Yan Gang made his move. Unwilling to be outdone, the students all rushed out to attack Qingyu. Qingyu was arrogant. If he hadn't revealed his sentinel strength, most students wouldn't have dared to attack him. But he was too arrogant and didn't bother hiding his strength. So what if he was a sentinel? Qingyu laughed maniacally. "A bunch of pathetic trash. I'll show you what it means to be strong. I'll show you how terrifying the Day-Night clan is." His staff flickered with black and white light, striking several students in an instant. 2 of them were severed at the waist and their blood splattered across the ground. Only Yan Gang's flaming spear was destroyed and he was forced back 10 steps. He looked up with a pale face. "The Day-Night clan?" Qingyu swung his staff horizontally, and a terrifying chi wave crushed the ground, causing countless cracks to appear. Fiery red lava splashed onto the ground, and the sky became scorching hot. Yan Gang's pupils shrank. The Day-Night clan, he was terrified. Lu Yin told Zhang Dingtian and the rest not to make a move. Qingyu had dared to reveal his strength, which meant that he had absolute confidence. This person was terrifying and even Lu Yin himself wasn't a match for him. Was this the Day-Night clan? He had never heard of it before the trial. With a cry of alarm, several students who had been tied up fell to the ground. Bai Shui immediately acted, sealing the ground with ice, and only then was a few people saved. Qingyu's staff smashed into a student's sword, shattering it and sending the student flying. He looked at Bai Shui. "An innate gift of ice? Woman, you're mine." With that, his body disappeared. The next moment he appeared in front of Bai Shui and reached out to grab her. Lu Yin used the roving step and barely managed to appear before Bai Shui was grabbed, striking out with a palm. The 3 stars of the cosmic palm immediately exploded. The terrifying force stopped Qingyu, and the irresistible repulsive force sent Bai Shui flying. "What battle technique is that?" Qingyu was shocked. Lu Yin gritted his teeth and retreated quickly. He was no match for Qingyu even though he was only a sentinel. Qingyu sneered and chased after him. Cultivator with an innate gift, unique battle technique and surpassing realms. You've successfully piqued my interest. Interesting, huh? All of a sudden, a majestic force erupted from the arena, rushing into the sky and sweeping through the clouds. The shockwave overturned everyone including Lu Yin. An unfamiliar man appeared in front of Qingyu and pressed both palms against his abdomen. Die. Qingyu was sent flying with a thump, his body smashing into the mountain wall. Everyone stared blankly at the scene. Was this a melder? A true melder? Lu Yin stared in shock. Even Qingyu couldn't react in time. The unfamiliar man suddenly turned around and attacked Lu Yin after sending Qingyu flying, his eyes filled with cold killing intent. No one had expected this, not even Lu Yin himself. Why would this person attack him? In the face of a melder's sure-kill attack, Lu Yin activated his cosmic art and barely managed to see the trajectory of the man's attack. He shifted his body sideways and narrowly avoided the attack. The man's attack shattered the ground, and the shockwaves caused several students to bleed. However, the attack missed Lu Yin. The man was shocked and wanted to attack again, but a beam of light shrouded him from the sky, forcefully interrupting his attack and injuring himself in the process. Everyone looked up. It was the Great Yu Empire's monitoring station. During the trial, any student who broke through to the Melder realm would be disqualified. And this person was clearly a Melder who had been forcibly expelled from the trial grounds. Lu Yin gasped for breath and glanced at the 42 students who had been captured, finally settling on Roz. Roz's eyes were filled with resentment and regret. There were only a few students who were qualified to command a Melder, and the one who hated Lu Yin the most was definitely him. Lu Yin clenched his fists and was about to kill this troublemaker when a loud explosion caused everyone to look at the mountain wall. Qingyu walked out of the dust cloud with a gloomy expression and a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. Many people's hearts sank. Not even a Melder's all-out attack could kill him? Qingyu wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and looked at Lu Yin with a cold expression. Very good. You're willing to give up your grades to deal with me. Not bad. Unfortunately, there won't be a second time. A mere Melder wants to kill me? Dream on. Today all of you will die. After speaking, he swung his staff out, causing it to cover the sky. Boundless pressure swept through the crowd, crushing many students to death. Zhou shouted, "He's injured, we can still win if we attack now." Yen Gang Munoer and the rest of the sealed Melders immediately attacked Qingyu. Qingyu laughed, "You want to win? I'll make you cry." He waved his hand and the ground in the distance was overturned, revealing 3 bound figures. Everyone stopped attacking and looked at the 3 in confusion. Only Zhang Dingtian and Bai Shui's expressions changed. Wang Yu Tongzhan Lu Xiaoga? Lu Yin looked at the 3 in shock. They were all part of China's 7 sages, especially Wang Yu, one of the 3 high sages. Why was he here? Even Lu Xiaoga had been captured. Qingyu grinned cruelly at Lu Yin. A mere ant dares to negotiate with me? Do you really think I gave you 10 days just to gather these trash? I'm capturing them, and anyone who dares to negotiate with me must die. Before you die, I'll make you suffer. It's not just the 3 of them. Beijing, Jinlin, Wuqing and the rest of China are all experiencing a beast tide. I'm the one who brought about the end of this planet, but so what? What can you do to me? Now regret it. He waved his hand, sending a strong gust of wind that cut off 3 heads. Bai Shui's face paled. Zhang Dingtian's eyes widened and he gripped his sword tightly as he charged at Qingyu. Qingyu sneered, his black and white hair fluttering in the wind as he pointed a finger at Zhang Dingtian. No one saw it clearly, but Zhang Dingtian's right chest was pierced and his body was flung away. Qingyu took the initiative to attack the students like a tiger in a flock of sheep. Bai Shui's eyes turned red as she sent a palm towards Qingyu, but he shattered the ice with a flick of his finger. He grabbed her hair and took a deep breath. "You smell so good, woman. You're mine from now on." Lu Yin's figure appeared, his left hand holding the sky beast claw and his right serious palm striking out. Qingyu's eyes grew cold. There were only a few people here that he took seriously, and Lu Yin was one of them. Bai Shui was flung away once more, and Lu Yin's sky beast claw was broken by Qingyu. Sirius palm collided with Qingyu's finger, causing the stars to explode. Still, Qingyu's right palm was pierced through and Lu Yin was forced to retreat. All the students stared at Qingyu in shock. This monster. Yan Gang spat out a mouthful of blood, the surface of his body cracked. This was a powerhouse from the Day-Night clan, a terrifying clan that surpassed everyone else. Boring, I wanted to play a little longer. Forget it, let's end this with them, Qingyu said indifferently as he looked in the direction of the captured students. Zhou and Balara were lying on the ground next to the captured students, their fates unknown. A handsome man with a gentle gaze had taken their place. Lu Yin clutched his bleeding right hand, his expression changing when he saw the man. Lu Xiaoge. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 58. Zhang Dingtian and Bai Shui looked on in disbelief. You're not dead, Lu Xiaoge? Lu Xiaoge smiled and bowed respectfully. Young master, I've taken control of all the captured students, 72 in total. That's enough. Qingyu nodded and looked up at the sky. Your trial is over. If you want these 72 lives, let me go. Why, Lu Xiaoge? Bai Shui shouted, glaring at him. Lu Xiaoge smiled. Little Shui, Earth is too small. I want to go to the stars. You betrayed us, but what about Wang Yu? Tongzhan? Bai Shui shouted. Lu Xiaoge shrugged. They're really dead. People who don't know what's good for them don't deserve sympathy. He looked at her warmly. Actually, with your innate gift, you should go to the stars. Give it up, you're a cultivator with an innate gift of ice. Your future shouldn't be limited to Earth. Zhang Dingtian's eyes went wide as he bit his lip. The pain that Qingyu had inflicted on Earth was nothing compared to what Lu Xiaoge had done. At the beginning of the apocalypse, Lu Xiaoge had ordered an entire city of survivors to be burned to ashes. His own body had been burned and he had experienced extreme pain. That had been the first time he had experienced such pain, and he would never forget it for the rest of his life. He had thought that it would be difficult for him to get revenge, but not only had Lu Xiaoge survived, he had even appeared in front of him. Lu Xiaoge faced Bai Shui as Qingyu waited for a reply from the stars. He closed his eyes and summoned his die in his right hand. He crushed a star crystal and the die frantically absorbed the energy. This was his only chance and he hoped that he would get it. Outside Earth, in a giant spacecraft, Sigmund sighed. It's over. All trials have failed. No one refuted him. Qingyu was invincible in the same realm and no one could defeat him. Tori Anna felt it was a pity. If only that girl from the Mavis family had gone as well. She might have been able to defeat Qingyu. Shalosh sneered. The Mavis family is the Mavis family and the Great Yu Empire is the Great Yu Empire. So what if the Mavis family defeated Qingyu? Will that girl become a citizen of the Great Yu Empire? Tori Anna didn't refute him, it was the truth. Sigmund turned to Mira. Miss Mira, I'm sorry to have let you witness a failed trial. The corners of Myra's mouth curled up in a smile. Her eyes were faintly red as she looked at the light screen. Failed? Is it over? Sigmund nodded helplessly. Sorry. Mira smiled and said, let's wait for a while. Isn't the trial the point of coming back from the jaws of death? Tori Anna replied bitterly. Qingyu is from the Day-Night clan and he's a fugitive thereafter. He's much stronger than his peers, let alone Sentinel students. He's almost invincible on Earth, even if he's only a Sentinel. At the mention of the Day-Night clan, even Myra's expression turned serious. How do you plan to deal with him? The Day-Night clan has sent word that we should try our best to capture them alive. If they're dead, their corpses are to be sent back to the Day-Night clan. Their ancient inheritance stones must be brought back, Sigmund said. Mira nodded. That means we don't care if they're dead or alive. Everyone fell silent. They were indeed considering whether or not to kill Qingyu. Qingyu had tried to trade the lives of 72 students for a chance to escape, but that was impossible. The pressure from the Day-Night clan was far greater than the lives of the 72 students. Let's wait a little longer. The Youth Council's rules state that the trial isn't over as long as there are still participants who haven't lost their ability to fight. Look, isn't that someone still trying? Mira stared at the screen where Lu Yin had just crushed a second star crystal. Lu Xiaoge. Zhang Dingtian roared, blood staining his clothes as he spat out a mouthful of blood. You're not dead. Lu Xiaoge was astonished. As he spoke, he slowly raised his hand. A ray of light bloomed and blasted towards Zhang Dingtian. Along the way, Zhang Dingtian's attack was easily shattered. Bai Shui appeared in front of Zhang Dingtian, layers of ice erected in an attempt to block Lu Xiaoge's attack. However, facing the power of the three saints of Bai Shui, Lu Xiaoge displayed terrifying strength. The light crushed and blasted Bai Shui and Zhang Dingtian back at the same time. Zhurlin and Balarer woke up from their stupor and were about to attack again, but they immediately stopped. This native seemed to be extraordinarily strong. "Don't break that woman," Qingyu said coldly as he glanced over. Lu Xiaoge bowed and grunted in acknowledgement before turning back to Zhang Dingtian and Bai Shui. "The so-called seven saints are a joke. Wang Yu and Tong Zhan were captured by me. They're too weak. Zhang Dingying, you might have been able to fight me at your peak, but you're nothing now. You have no idea how strong I am." Zhang Dingtian spat out a mouthful of blood and couldn't even hold his blade properly. Bai Shui's eyes were bloodshot, her gaze cold. Not too far away, Lu Yin was vexed. He had rolled 2 pips the first time, which allowed him to disintegrate things. He immediately crushed a second star crystal and rolled 5 pips. He glanced at the smug Qingyu and Lu Xiaoge, who had defeated both Zhang Dingtian and Zhang Dingtian. He took a deep breath and tried again. When the die stopped spinning, the 5 faces disappeared to reveal a 4. Lu Yin was excited. This was it. The next moment he entered a grayish-white space, the time-stop space. He took out all the star crystals he had left from his cosmic ring and threw them at the numbers. Immediately, the number increased from 25,920 to 43680. 5 days. He had used up all the star crystals he had left to increase his time by 2 days. He then began to treat his injuries, took out his star chart and immersed himself in it. 5 days was enough time for him to simulate the 4th star. As for how strong the cosmic palm with 4 stars would be and whether or not it would be able to block Qingyu, he would have to give it a try. 5 days was a long time in the grayish-white space. There was no sound or scenery, only loneliness. By the end of the 3rd day, Lu Yin's injuries had healed considerably, and the 4th star of the serious art was becoming clearer and clearer. By the end of the 4th day, the 4th star had appeared. When the number reached 0, Lu Yin's vision changed and he left the grayish-white space. Time had not changed in the real world. Qingyu was still looking up at the sky, Lu Xiaoge was still as indifferent as ever, and Bai Shui and the rest were furious. Many of the students were lying on the ground, heavily injured. "Are you not going to answer me? Do you really want to kill me?" Qingyu shouted, his figure vanishing and reappearing in front of the captured students. He grabbed Hu Xiaoling's long red hair and sneered, "I'll bury her with me." Hu Xiaoling was furious, her terrifying power spiraling as she tried to break through her seal. Qingyu was cold and arrogant. "You want to break through? Think carefully. A melder who failed a sentinel trial mission can join the Astral Combat Academy?" Hu Xiaoling's face paled. Qingyu had told her this many times already, which was why she had willingly allowed herself to be captured. She was a dignified melder with an innate gift, yet she had failed a sentinel trial mission. To the Astral Combat Academy, such students were trash. It wasn't just the Astral Combat Academy. No other academy in the universe would accept such a student. This would be the greatest stain on her life. Hu Xiaoling closed her eyes and retracted her star energy. She couldn't break through even if she died. Outside Earth, Sigmund grew anxious. "Miss Mira, we can't wait any longer. Hu Xiaoling can't die." Tori, Anna and Shalash were also staring at the screen. If Hu Xiaoling died on Earth, the Great Yu Empire would be shaken. The Hu family wasn't to be trifled with and they would all be in trouble. Mira didn't pay any attention to Hu Xiaoling. A mere scion from a peripheral planet wasn't worth her attention. She kept her eyes on Lu Yin, who seemed to have changed from the very beginning. The most obvious change was the injury on his hand, which had healed so quickly. Was it an innate gift? Was it that die? They had all seen Lu Yin's innate gift die. It had been strange at first, but they hadn't thought much of it since anything could happen. Now, however, it seemed that it wasn't ordinary at all. "Miss Mira," Sigmund said anxiously. Myra's lips curled up as she pointed at the screen and everyone looked over in shock. Back on Earth, Qingyu, who should have been a threat to Hu Xiaoling, was now a dozen meters away from her. He had just been pushed back by a ferocious palm strike? What a joke! Qingyu looked up and stared ahead. It wasn't just Qingyu. Everyone else stared blankly. Lu Yin stood in front of Hu Xiaoling and withdrew his hand. "You seem to have forgotten about me." Everyone looked at Lu Yin. This person had pushed back Qingyu? Jerlin swallowed her saliva. Geraldine was shocked. Ever since she had followed this person, her worldview had been completely refreshed. Qingyu had swept through all the other students, but this person had actually pushed him back. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 59. Zhang Dingtian smiled. Even though he was seriously injured, he still smiled. Bai Shui stared at Lu Yin expectantly. She had never felt so helpless before. Qingyu sighed. You've been hiding your strength all this time? Lu Yin shrugged. Not really. Once a person is forced into a corner, their potential explodes. Qingyu laughed. So what if you're an ant? I'll send you on your way first. He then pointed a finger at Lu Yin, defeating Zhang Dingtian, Yen Gang and Munoer as well as all the other students. It had also defeated Lu Yin's cosmic palm. Lu Yin's gaze turned cold and he raised his hand, for stars revolving around him as he struck out. You're courting death. Qingyu shouted. The Day-Night clan was the embodiment of terror in the universe, and their battle techniques were invincible. Bang 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 bang. 4 consecutive explosions rang out. Qingyu did not care about the first 3 explosions, but when the 4th explosion rang out, a terrifying pressure descended. The irresistible impact bent his fingers in an instant, and at the same time a palm struck his right chest, sending him flying out. Shockwaves surged out and crushed the ground, the force of the collision sweeping through the sky like a tornado. Everyone went deaf for a moment, their vision turning gray and dust filling the sky. When the wind blew by and the dust settled, everyone was shocked. Qingyu had been defeated. Lu Yin panted heavily, his right hand in pain as a trace of blood seeped through his skin. Qingyu's face was pale as he glared at Lu Yin, his right finger shattered and his entire body trembling with rage. What battle technique was that? Lu Yin exhaled. A battle technique that will kill you. He then used the roving step to rush towards Qingyu, raising his palm to strike out once more. He wanted to kill Qingyu. Others might not understand, but as someone from a terrifying clan, Qingyu knew full well just how terrifying the cosmic palm was. This person might bring him trouble in the future. Qingyu roared, You ant, I'll let you experience the power of the Day-Night clan. Boom. Lu Yin retreated, leaving a dozen footprints on the ground. He looked up and saw Qingyu rushing out of the dust. Do you think I only know one battle technique? The Day-Night clan may not have much else, but they have countless battle techniques. He then swiped at Lu Yin with his left hand. Lu Yin resisted the urge to vomit blood and raised his left hand as well, using the 7th form of the Sky Beast Claw. Bang! The earth shook again. Terrifying shockwaves engulfed the ground. Shattered rocks flew everywhere, piercing through the mountain walls. Everyone was shocked as they watched the two fight amidst the dust. How could a sentinel reach such a level? Outside of Earth, Sigmund and the others were also shocked. How is this person so powerful? That was the Sky Beast Claw. It should have reached the 7th form. Wasn't that a battle technique of Yu Academy? He really did learn Yu Academy's battle techniques. What's really amazing was blocking Qing Yu's attack. That was Qing Yu's strongest battle technique, but he still lost. This person is not simple. We must investigate him. Myra's eyes lit up as she looked at Lu Yin. While others were looking at Lu Yin's battle technique, she was looking at his fully healed palm. It had clearly been pierced through by that finger, but it was now completely healed. The tremors seemed to explode in everyone's hearts, causing many of the students to go pale with shock. There was a loud boom as the two figures retreated at the same time. Qingyu glared at Lu Yin, panting heavily. Lu Yin's hands trembled. He had not only healed his injuries in the time-stop space, but he had also recovered much of his physical strength. The scene was silent and only the roaring of the lava could be heard. In everyone's eyes, the attack had only lasted for an instant. Qingyu had disappeared, and when he reappeared, Lu Yin had already pushed him into the ground. It was that simple, but only Lu Yin knew how dangerous it had been. Even Hua Xiaoling, who had become a melder, might not have been able to dodge Qingyu's attack. Only someone like Lulu, who had mastered extreme speed, would have been able to do so. Although Lu Yin hadn't mastered extreme speed, his serious art was the bane of extreme speed. Lu Xiaoge's eyes flickered as he looked at the ground. Everyone looked at the ground, at the figure buried in the ground. Was he dead? Lu Yin stood beside the hole, panting as he felt the heat of the lava. Qingyu had brought this upon himself. He had been too careless and thought that Lu Yin would definitely be hit, or else he wouldn't have been hit so hard. It was a pity that Lu Yin couldn't learn Qingyu's extreme speed. The Day-Night clan's battle techniques had a unique feeling, just like their name. One couldn't feel the rhythm of the battle techniques, and it was useless even if they could see the changes. Lu Yin had thought that he could use the serious art to learn all sorts of battle techniques in the universe, but that seemed impossible now. Some battle techniques could only be learned in a specific environment. Within the cone-shaped hole, the ground cracked and Qingyu pressed one hand against the ground and slowly stood up, glaring at Lu Yin with bloodshot eyes. "You've really angered me, you ant." Lu Yin frowned. This guy was truly a space-exploring powerhouse. Even with his cultivation sealed, his physical body was still difficult to defeat. Qingyu hadn't died even after taking an all-out attack from Lu Yin and a melder, and his recovery speed was incredible. If this continued, Lu Yin would definitely lose. "No matter what you do, you won't be able to defeat me. Despair, ant." Qingyu growled as he charged at Lu Yin. Lu Yin's expression changed and he suddenly looked at the spectating students in the distance and rushed over. Qingyu coughed up blood, but he endured his injuries and chased after Lu Yin. "You can't escape." Lu Yin rushed towards the spectating students, causing many to flee in fear. "This bastard is trying to distract us. Run. Don't let him catch you," someone shouted. All of the students quickly slipped away. Lu Yin didn't care about the others. He was only focused on one person, Munoer, the sealed melder who was relentlessly chasing after him. Munoer's face went pale. "What are you doing?" Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 60. Lu Yin used the roving step to rush to Munoer's side and punched him in the stomach. Munoer had been injured by Qingyu and couldn't outrun Lu Yin, but he couldn't resist either. Lu Yin stuffed a tube of medicine into his mouth before viciously throwing it at Qingyu. "Go! You bastard, what did you feed me?" Munoer shouted in horror. "Strong cultivation powder," Lu Yin said and ran away without looking back. Munoer's expression changed drastically. Overpower powder was a medicine used by melders to strengthen their attacks. It wasn't harmful to melders, but it was different for sentinels as they could be severely injured by the backlash. "Damn you, Lu Yin!" Munoer roared, terrifying star energy erupting from his body as he broke through the seal and entered the melder realm. Qingyu charged towards him and the two faced each other. Munoer instinctively struck out with his Sky Beast Claw. As a sentinel he could only use 7 forms of the Sky Beast Claw, but as a melder he could use 10. Qingyu's pupils shrank as he tried to escape, but the Sky Beast Claw covered an area of 100 meters and slammed him into the ground. He spat out a mouthful of blood and crashed to the ground once more. At the same time, a beam of light chased him away. "Lu Yin, I'm not done with you," Munoer roared. Lu Yin didn't bother with him, instead rushing to the surface and slamming down with his palm. Against a powerhouse like Qingyu who had the strength of an explorer, Lu Yin could only use all of his strength to attack. 5 consecutive cosmic palms landed on the spot where Qingyu had been heavily injured, ruthlessly pressing him into the mountain range as dust filled the air. The entire mountain range was split in 2. Lu Yin panted heavily and raised his hand again. He had used up all of his star energy, but he still had the shockwave palm and space render palm. He didn't hesitate and attacked Qingyu continuously. Qingyu opened his mouth and spat out a large mouthful of blood, but when he saw Lu Yin's murderous gaze he gritted his teeth and roared, "Damn it, I can't use my innate gifts because of my injuries. I'm only a sentinel. Stop, I'm an awakened Night King, no one dares to kill me." Lu Yin raised his right palm and unleashed the final serious palm. "Die." He slammed down with his palm, but it stopped a centimeter away from Qingyu's body. Lu Yin's wrist was grabbed and a middle-aged man suddenly appeared beside them, staring at Qingyu in shock. "What did you just say?" Qingyu spat out another mouthful of blood and laughed. "I'm a Night King, a Night King." The middle-aged man's eyes narrowed as he looked at Qingyu's hair. Between the black and white strands, there was an inconspicuous gray strand that shocked the man. The middle-aged man paled and threw Lu Yin away, taking out a potion from his cosmic ring and feeding it to Qingyu. He looked nervous as if he was afraid of something. At the same time, Tori Anna and Shalosh appeared beside the conical crater, staring at the gray strand of hair in shock. This was the symbol of a Night King, a member of the Day-Night royal family. Any Night King was the Day-Night clan's reverse scale, and anyone who touched them would be slaughtered. In the past, Qingyu had only been an ordinary member of the Day-Night clan, but now he was a Night King. Even within the Day-Night clan he held a supreme position. The Great Yu Empire the Frostwave Weave did not dare to touch someone like him. Lu Yin narrowed his eyes and took out a healing potion as well. His entire body was exhausted and his skin was cracking. His body couldn't withstand the ferocious attack from before. He had thought that he could kill Qingyu and obtain his formcast model, but he hadn't expected the Great Yu Empire to intervene. Night King? Lu Yin's heart trembled. He had seen this surname when he had accepted the stone's inheritance. Night King Zhenwu was at the top of the corridor. A giant spacecraft had appeared in the sky at some point, blocking out the sun. All students, please take note. The trial is over and the results will be announced by the various academies. Many students heaved a sigh of relief. It was finally over. Varen, Eddie, Roz and the rest breathed a sigh of relief as well. It wasn't that they hadn't participated in trials before, but none had been as terrifying as this one. They should have been able to roam the native planets freely, but instead they had been kidnapped and shamefully turned into hostages. They hadn't even had a chance to participate in the final battle. Even a melder had taken action. Lu Xiaoge released all the students. Qingyu's identity had been exposed and they were useless to him. They were useless against Qingyu, but they had been used by Lu Yin and the rest to negotiate with the Great Yu Empire on behalf of Earth. If Lu Yin had been able to kill Qingyu in the final battle, he would have been the only one to complete the mission. Such a result would have been enough for him to participate in Astral Ten's selections. Hua Xiaoling was also looking at Lu Yin. The battle had truly shocked her. She had thought that this was the best she could do as a melder. Qingyu's body was far stronger than a melder's and she knew that she wouldn't be able to defeat him. However, this person had been able to do so as a sentinel. Although there had been some trickery involved, it was still shocking. Bai Shui stared at Lu Xiaoge, her eyes filled with anger and sorrow. Zhang Dingyun dragged his heavily injured body to his feet and glared at Qingyu. The culprit who had harmed countless people on Earth had been saved just like that. Return to the ship, we'll give you the best treatment, Sigmund said. He was the middle-aged man who had stopped Lu Yin's final palm strike. Cough, cough. Qingyu coughed up a mouthful of blood. His injuries had been too severe. Explorers mainly relied on star energy to protect their bodies, but his star energy was only enough for him to display the strength of a sentinel. His physical defenses had been greatly reduced and he'd been attacked by two melders, one of whom had even used the strength enhancement powder. Coupled with the fact that he'd endured so many attacks from Lu Yin, it was fortunate that he hadn't died. Qingyu spat out another mouthful of blood and looked up at Lu Yin with a grin. "And isn't it a pity that you couldn't kill me?" "Ah." Sigmund sighed. If it had only been a member of the Day-Night clan, it wouldn't have been a big deal. After all, the Day-Night clan had issued the arrest warrant. However, the Night King clan was different. Even the Day-Night clan didn't dare put the Night King on trial. They were royalty and only the Night King clan could put Qingyu on trial. It was a pity that he had awakened as a Night King on Earth. The Night King clan's population was too small, and every member was treated like a treasure. If Qingyu had been killed in the Great Yu Empire, the entire Great Yu Empire would have been dyed red, and no one would have been able to escape. Even Mira hadn't stopped Sigmund from interfering, a testament to the Night King clan's power. There was no such thing as absolute fairness and the Night King clan had the right to break it. General Sigmund, that native almost killed me. Kill him now. Roz shouted as he ran up to Sigmund. Sigmund slapped Roz to the ground. Shut up. Shalosh appeared in front of Roz and looked down at him from above. He then turned to Qingyu and smiled respectfully. Do you need me to get rid of these natives for you? His words immediately put Lu Yin, Zhang Dingtian, and the rest on guard as they glared angrily at Shalosh. Sigmund looked at Qingyu as well. Tori Anna did the same. Qingyu's status was the highest among them all from the moment he had become a Night King. Lu Xiaoge silently walked up behind Qingyu and stood respectfully. Qingyu wiped the corner of his mouth with his thumb and looked at the scarlet stain on his finger. He looked up at Lu Yin. No need, just wait. I'll be back soon, and when I do, this planet will cease to exist. Everyone will die. Zhang Dingtian's gaze turned cold as he clenched his fists. He felt sorrow. Qingyu had caused Earth's apocalypse and killed countless people. He had personally killed Wang Yu and Tong Zhan, caused beast tides to erupt all over China and caused countless deaths. Now he was declaring the destruction of Earth. This person was the greatest enemy of Earth, and he had a blood feud with everyone. Zhang Dingtian swore that if he could, he would kill this person in the future as a sacrifice to the countless dead. You're so kind. As you wish, we'll preserve this planet for you, Shalosh smiled. Qingyu didn't care about Shalosh at all. He had once been an explorer himself, and his strength far surpassed Shalosh's. What he cared about was Lu Yin, an ant who had defeated him. This was a stain that he would never be able to erase for the rest of his life, and he would have to wipe it out himself. However, now was not the time. The most important thing was to return to the ancestral land with the inheritance stone and become a true Night King. Let's go, Qingyu smiled at Lu Xiaoge with a cruel look in his eyes. I'll be back soon, Aunt. Just you wait. A beam of light descended from the sky and brought both him and Lu Xiaoge to the spacecraft. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.